Okay, I got the red smoke.
Gun run, north to south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it, like driving over here. You've been giving me shit for almost 20 years.
Yeah,
Like that's a long relationship, and it was abusive at a time, as you well know. Granted, it was institutionally supposed to be that way. But yeah, as our second phase proctor, that was a lot of fun. That was great. I was like 23, and you were, God, I don't even know. How old are you?
I am 48. So yeah, if that was 20 years ago, I was in my late 20s. It doesn't seem like 20 years, man. That time seems to have just ripped by.
Like,
I know.
It literally is. So, serious topics, Ukraine, Trump, Zelensky.
I'm just curious, your thoughts on how I think that plays out. From an outsider, I watch people talk about peace. They have meetings. He talks to people, ceasefire followed immediately by notifications of drone strikes and bombings. It seems to be the record going around. I'm just curious your thoughts on how you think that'll play out.
Yeah, and I remember having you on my podcast, but it's been a few years, and we talked a lot about Ukraine and kind of the reasoning behind why we even bother with this issue. And so, years go by. As usual, the American people get tired of whatever it is we're doing. And, we're not losing anybody. I would note that the cost is just over $100 billion, but most of that actually comes back to our own defense industry, our own American economy. When you're really talking about percentages, you're talking about, I used to say 5% of defense spending per year, but over the years, that number can't be 5%. It's got to be like between 3 and 5%. Okay, so the perspective is important. Trump comes in, rightfully in a difficult situation because he's got a situation where he cannot let his legacy be losing to Putin. He knows that. He doesn't want that. He has never said he's going to abandon Ukraine. All right, I think there's a segment of the especially the populist right that of course wants to, but he never said that. He was very careful with his words throughout the campaign trail. He always said, "I'm going to broker a deal," and obviously he meant it. And it was a perfect timing, too, because a deal could not have been brokered by Kamala Harris. I used to say Kamala, and then I'd get, people would say, "You said her name wrong." Who cares? She's irrelevant. It couldn't have been brokered by her because it would just be, Biden 2.0. And you can't just change the paradigm of the geopolitics. And so it was really important for Trump to become president for this to even be an option. And also his personality. Is one of deal making. He's hard on his friends. He's sort of nice to Putin in public, which is he knows that's what you need to do, and he knows because of his own internal politics that he needs to be kind of like hard on Zelensky, which he was. This last meeting was very much different. But we all remember the Oval Office meeting. Now that was, I think, Zelensky's fault completely. I mean, he was just litigating the history of Russia for, when all he had to do was sign the minerals deal. Because the minerals deal that we wanted to sign with them is their security guarantee, right? When you're economically tied, it's an implicit security guarantee. That's always been the unspoken reality. Well, that's pretty spoken, I would say. And so, moving forward, I think Ukrainians understand they're going to have to give something here. They definitely understand they can't fight forever. And what Trump has done also is put a little bit more oomph behind the peace through strength slogan. And it's a great slogan, but it's only great if you remember the strength part. And what I love about President Trump is he actually does. I mean, we're seeing a lot of pretty hard calculated strikes recently, are we not? Whether it's the Caribbean or an embargo around Venezuela or bombing Iranian nuclear facilities. He's obviously not this dovish isolationist that I think many of his base want him to be. He's much more along the lines of what I want him to be, which is a more rational American leadership, right? Doesn't mean occupy countries necessarily, And we can always talk about the history of why we did that and why you and me were over there, and that's worth talking about always, I think, because I think a lot of people get it wrong, but that's not Trump's style. And Ukraine isn't asking us to be involved on boots on the ground. We're not involved boots on the ground. And so Trump has done a masterful game here where he's pushing the diplomacy as far as possible while also still arming Ukrainians. I mean, the presidential drawdowns in this year have still been between $6 and $10 billion. Now, it's a lot cheaper to fund this war than it used to be because of the way it's being fought. The Ukrainians are picking up most of that slack. Europeans are picking up a lot more, and it's mostly drones. So also what Trump has done is really actually tightened and enforced those sanctions. This was a constant complaint. Like, why are we spending all this money, but we're not even doing the easiest thing, which is the sanctions on Russia? Not just that, but also third parties that might be aiding Russia. So he's done that. Trump has also taken has given more flexibility to the Ukrainians for what they can use those weapons for. So that's where the strength part comes in, because if you're dealing with somebody like Putin, you cannot get a deal by being nice, right? Like, it's good. It's still a good idea publicly, and Trump gets so much crap for it. But I tell people, you got to look at the actions, and the actions are actually ones of gaining more leverage, not the opposite. And so, where does this go? I mean, it's much more so in Russia's hands at this point. I think Zelensky is where we need him to be. Mm-hmm. Almost, they're going to have some disagreements over borders and all that, and which land to call it. You can call it a demilitarized, whatever you want to call it. They've got to work that stuff out. Putin is a tricky one and a bit unpredictable, and also just highly irrational. I mean, they're spending thousands of lives for a few meters at a time. It's nuts, and he's a little harder to predict and a little bit less rational than I think people realize. Kind of leave it there, but that's the basics.
Yeah. I'm not going to claim to be, and it's actually probably good to put this up front. I don't claim to be a student of or a scholar of our government or geopolitical politics, specifically the conflict in Ukraine and Russia and the history of the region and back and forth and the Donbass and all of that. It's interesting to hear you say that Trump is doing all of those things. I think depending on where you get your information from publicly, you're going to hear an opposite narrative of that. And I think, or I suspect that today when we're talking, that might be a little bit more of a common theme. Like, you're hearing one thing where perhaps the reality of it is something else.
Well, give me an example. I mean, because I'm definitely stating facts, but I'm curious. I mean, there's so much stuff said about Ukraine, I can't even keep track of it. I mean,
there is a hallway of people that would say that Trump is just Putin's bitch.
Yeah, and that's what I was referring to. Like, those are Democrats kind of saying that. Like, and it's because of how Trump acts in public. And I always tell them, I'll defend Trump here. I'll say, look at his action. This was remember the first term, right? Russiagate, and he loves Putin. Well, I remember listing like 6 or 7 things that were like so counter to Russia from an action perspective. This guy is not. I want to give Trump a little credit here. So anyway, yeah, that is definitely one. You were correct.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's most people are busy enough in their day that they miss most headlines, and some of them are stickier than others, and they will stick. It doesn't mean that they're true. It can always mean that there's a difference between what you're hearing and what you're seeing in real life, and that's a litmus test that I use for myself, where I see these, a social media wave of something coming along. I'll put my phone down and say, okay, am I actually seeing this in my real life? Am I engaging with people like this? Is there reality to this, or is this being push hard and fast? It's I don't know. And again, I'm a fan of a lot of Trump's policies. Full disclosure, I'm not a fan of the way he conducts himself at times. Not writ large, but at times. Nobody's perfect. Trust me. Looking in the mirror, I'm not a fan of the way I act sometimes. So I'm certainly not casting a lens of perfection. Oh, I trust me. Do you want to go alphabetically or numerically for the mistakes I've made in my life and the dumb stuff I've done? So I get it. So perfect isn't possible. I don't know how to make a recommendation to people of where they can go to truly separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to almost every topic in the modern era, because it becomes difficult. I'm not a student of politics in the U.S. from a depth and breadth understanding. Paying attention to it later in my adult life, the tribalism that I see that is on display, which actually creates like this force field of actually being able to see past a lot of things. There's plenty of people who want to accept a narrative of it aligns with their team and what they believe with, even when they can be shown actions that don't align with that. There's no ability for them to believe or no willingness to. And I don't know first of all, I don't know how we got to that, but I also don't know where we go from that.
Yeah.
Because then it's just two teams smashing each other from across the field. And at the end of the day, the country suffers for it. We're not getting any better because of that tribalism.
Yeah. And that tribalism, people kind of, I speak to a lot of high schools and I teach civics courses. And I lament the fact that kids these days do feel the pressure to choose a side very early in their life, which is really odd. I don't think you and I had that experience. You're not that much older than me. I didn't pay attention
to politics into my 20s or 30s. I definitely wasn't being told I needed to pick a side. Yeah.
Same. And even though I went to Tufts, I went to a pretty liberal school. I never felt like liberalism or progressivism was shoved down my throat. And maybe it wasn't, I just wasn't paying attention. All I cared about was being a SEAL, and that's it. So, Yeah. But I was also pretty academic, and I studied international relations as a major. So it easily could have creeped in, right? I mean, I was doing political classes, and I never felt that way. It never felt, this is on the cusp of, we're starting the Iraq War. I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's talk about that, but it was nothing like it is today. Kids really have it bad today. And so I have to tell kids, I'm like, look, I hope you choose my side, but for God's sakes, just wait. Just wait before you choose, because you don't know anything. And there's a plethora of information out there, but your brain is the same brain from 2,000 years ago, cheering in the Roman Colosseum as people get eaten by lions. You can only imbibe so much information, right? And you can only digest it, and you got to use your experiences to frame that information correctly. Yeah. So just be patient and humble, and and that will make you a better thinker. And as far as to your question as to where to go, I mean, I'll give people a quick list. I mean, first of all, my podcast, Hold These Truths. I'm not really joking. I always have experts on who, it's from a conservative point of view. Okay. So just flat out, it's a conservative point of view, but I think that's pretty transparent. And in the 300 plus episodes, you can find an episode where I'm interviewing an expert on literally every single policy issue. By now, I think every single thing has been covered. I mean, my most recent one was the history of Christmas. So it's not always political. I had a Catholic priest on who did exorcisms. That one is worth a watch, Andy, if you haven't seen that. Well, did you just
say he did exorcisms?
Yeah. There's like an American Catholic priest who's given permission by the Vatican to speak more publicly and because they've always kept this stuff really close hold. And he was given permission to speak publicly about like what really is an exorcism, and super interesting. But I have whole episodes on FDA reform. I mean, and agriculture and like how to train policy. Like, I mean, just everything. So that's for like policy nerds. My podcast is where to go. For your general news, though, I have started doing something I call the sit rep. Which is, of course, a situation report, something most of your audience probably knows. And that's my goal there is to just give you the news in like 15 minutes. And I'll do my best too to like not actually add a conservative flavor to that. Just try and like, here's the facts of what's happening. Okay. Now, your mainstream stuff. I mean, look, from a conservative perspective, National Review, The Daily Wire, Wall Street Journal, these are all decent places to get the conservative perspective. If you want the liberal perspective and you want to see how they compare, just go to your typical big magazines. Honestly, I mean, the New York Times and whatever, you're going to get a more liberal perspective. Sometimes the reporting is highly accurate, sometimes it's not. And I think that the people make this mistake of like, okay, well, they were proven wrong this time, so I can't ever listen to anything else ever. That's a logical fallacy. And so people have been pushed into getting their news on social media, from influencers, from podcasters, and there's way less accountability there. Obviously, I just recommended my own podcast, but my accountability is at least political. I mean, it's an official podcast. You know, I don't sell ads on it. It's not a campaign podcast. I do it right here in my office. So, you know, it's and like anything we do, we have an interest in not lying because we will get called out for it very quickly in public life. But that's a quick rundown of I think some good sources that people can generally go to. But if you want more specifics, like all the stuff I just told you about what Trump has done, that I have to get it's not obvious where to find that. My staff knows where to look this stuff up. And so we can put it out there. And I wish reporters framed it better and did that kind of thing, but they don't. So
I don't know if it would matter if they did, because for better or worse, for right or wrong, there's a segment of society that I believe, at least from what I am seeing, it won't really matter what his actions are. The disdain they have for the person will override any of those particular actions.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, what if you're neutral, and you want to know where to go? Your question is right on. It would be nice if there was just kind of a place. And the reality is you've got to use your own critical thinking and you should be able to read something and say, this sounds like it's spin, right? They haven't cited anything. There's no real facts. It's a problem. I can spot that really quickly because I do this all the time. It's not always obvious to people.
Neutral is an interesting term. It almost is pejorative in this sense. People don't want you to be neutral. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you think conservatism and liberalism have moved to both the left and right, respectively? And I ask that because I talked to my dad, who I would put more along the lines probably of maybe leans a little bit more left, born and raised in Santa Cruz, like myself. He was in the military as well. He describes the Liberal Party or the Democratic Party today, in the terms essentially of they have moved away from what I thought liberalism was when I was growing up. I'm curious when you think that shift started. I've heard the same thing from conservatism as well. I mean, there's certainly fringes, of course, to either belief system or ideology. And the farther you get out towards the fringe, it gets a little bit Wild West. I'm curious, though, how much do you think conservatism and liberalism have moved from perhaps their original definition?
Short answer, real quick. Conservatism is in a civil war right now between keeping it as traditional conservatism and moving it towards what I would describe as liberalism. But it hasn't moved nearly as much as liberalism has moved. Liberalism has changed to progressivism. And there's a difference. Conservatives could easily classify themselves as classical liberals, based on the classical liberal ideas of John Locke and our founders. This idea that you have God-given rights, this idea that you have any kind of negative rights at all. Negative rights and positive rights, an important distinction. Negative rights mean basically our Bill of Rights are all negative rights, right? You cannot have an undue search and seizure. You shall not be infringed on your firearms shall not be infringed upon. You have the right to free speech. You have right to, our laws are based on that, right? Like you have the right not to be murdered. We can take away. You have the right to life, liberty, and property until you infringe on somebody else's life, liberty, and property, and then your life, liberty, and property are now up for grabs. That's what jail is. So those are classical liberal principles, and we could talk about that forever. Liberals sort of used to defend that, but I would say the modern progressive actually started back in Woodrow Wilson's days. The modern progressive is progressivism towards what end? Who knows? It's progress. Keep progressing. And this is why it changes so easily. Traditional conservatism, by definition, is based on limiting principles, and so is kept in a box. Now, again, people are trying to take it out of that box. That's the civil war you're seeing right now online. But ideally, it never really changes. And honestly, if we're just going by policy in Congress, and it really hasn't changed very much. What Trump has changed is mostly the personality of it. Right. It's, in politics in general, and you can't blame Trump for this. It's everybody. Everybody's just meaner. That's the change. It's more of a personality thing than policy. Now, on the left, there is vast policy changes. I mean, let's just look at Bill Clinton's presidency versus now. Let's look at Obama's statements and Biden's statements on things like abortion and gay marriage and the border. Completely opposite. You would. I mean, we play those clips all the time as Republicans just to show people like how far they've come. You know, they're just like radically opposite. I mean, we could play those clips now and say, and this is a MAGA conservative. And so I would agree with your dad wholeheartedly. Like the Progressive Party, well, the Liberal Party, the Democrat Party has become a progressive party as opposed to this sort of Democrat, working class, unionized, like, you know, supportive unions kind of party. And then we could go down a million different policy issues to prove that. But I think it's well understood by most people. I just listed a few, right? Like the border, the welfare. God, I mean, like big welfare reform is what occurred under Bill Clinton. Actually managing our debt. The only time we ever balanced the budget was under Bill Clinton. Now it was because Republicans actually took Congress for the first time in like 40 years. So you can't just give that win to Clinton, but he did sign off on it. He didn't fight it. I mean, it was just a very different era. If the Democrat Party was still in that era, they would be winning right now because they would just be conservatives. And I do think America is a middle right country. And I think when you want to chop 12-year-olds, genitals off because they just come to a doctor and say they're a boy or something, whatever, a different gender one day, I think you've lost track of what's real. And that's how progressivism is. It's like it'll always surprise you because you don't know what it's progressing toward. Real quick on the right, what is this Civil War about? I mean, to me, it's about populism versus traditional conservatism. Traditional conservatism is based on these limiting principles, right? Like the best way to describe limiting principles is like the way we do policy is we ask questions. Okay, if we do this policy, what are the trade-offs? You know, should this policy even be enacted by government, or should this problem be solved by the community itself? Should people just solve this? And if government should step in, which government? Like local, state, federal? These are conservative questions to ask. In the Democrat Party, it's always like federal every time. And so we ask those kind of questions. If we enact this policy, let's say on gun control or red flag laws, right, which I'm tainted with, but even though I literally introduce a bill every single term, they call the Stopping Unjust Red Flag Laws Act, because I don't believe. I
thought you were the founder of that clause. I thought you were
the founder. I literally made the entire policy up. No, real quick, the actual story there is I tweeted one in my first year, and I was so foolish as to think that like there was still like nuanced discussions in public life, and there's not. El Paso shooting had just happened, and President Trump at the time was like, "Yeah, we got to do red flag laws." I mean, he was just straight upset. It kind of freaked out the 2A community, and so I tweeted after that. I was like, "Yeah, maybe consider them at the state level." That was it. That's all I said. And then I got just destroyed for it for years. And so I do introduce that bill as like just to clarify my position. But it's a good example, right? So if we do this thing that makes you feel safer, it's not even necessarily true that it will make you safer. It makes you feel safer. Does it infringe on the rights of others to an extent that is unbearable? And when we're talking about something like the Second Amendment, I mean, you're talking about the Second Amendment to the Constitution. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of unbearable if you're infringing on that right. Yeah. Okay.
Do you really think that nuanced conversation is dead in person? I find it to be online, but I've had a lot of conversations. The term red flag. Yeah, the term red flag.
I mean national conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, nationally, we're a collection of individuals. You know what I mean? Like, I get the national conversation, but the reality is, in my day-to-day, when I sit down and I talk with people, the word red flag scares them, but the concept of figuring out a way, and maybe it is a self-reporting or just, in some way, shape, or form, facilitating an ability for somebody, if they recognize that they are in a place where they are at a danger to themselves and potentially others, where they can do something about it, where they're not going to lose their Second Amendment rights. I actually haven't encountered anybody who's like, that's a horrible idea. They're like, let's think about that. Yeah. Online, a different story.
Online is very different, right?
But is online real?
And you can't even have that discussion online. I mean, you just can't, because how are you defining red flag law? So first of all, the way it's understood in the 2A community is like your ex-girlfriend or your neighbor can make a complaint and boom, your guns are gone. That would be really bad. I mean, that would be wrong. And so
it would do a fractional amount. Yeah, it might have a fractional amount of positive impact and a gigantic amount of negative impact for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's understood. Obviously, there's a lot of circumstances under which someone's property can be taken away, and that includes guns, but they have to go through some kind of due process. And so it's definitely not a red flag law. If we have to define our terms. And so if a red flag law is just as I described it, which is basically a complaint, then no, just no, right?
Agreed.
You have to have some kind of due process. And most states already have these laws. Also, and it's, I mean, if you're a domestic abuser, for instance, I mean, you have gone through due process, you have been judged accordingly, and then now we're talking about a totally different conversation. When we get back to limiting principles, so like we'll ask if somebody's rights are being infringed upon. It's like, hey, healthcare for all sounds great, wonderful, okay, but do you have a right to healthcare? No. I mean, it's nice to have, and we do want everyone to have it, but if you have a right to healthcare, that means you have a right to somebody else's labor and time. So that's kind of an insane thing to say. So you're infringing on their rights, that doctor's right to say, I want to take the break right now. I don't want to see the 20 patients today. I want to see 10. So even the concept of a right to somebody else's labor and time is just unacceptable to conservatives, but very acceptable to liberals. And so, we could go on and on and on. We ask if it's too much too quickly. We ask, and these are all limiting principle ideals. That's what keeps us in a box as conservatives. Adherence to certain cultural markers, traditional, this idea that we were founded upon a Judeo-Christian moral framework is very important. It doesn't make us anti any other, we still have freedom of religion, but we were still founded upon this certain moral framework. That's important to conservatives. It's the idea of a meritocracy. I would also add into the cultural pillar. I'm going to give you 3 pillars. I was on such a roll. So yeah, 3 pillars of conservatism. 3 pillars. This is kind of going to the Russell Kirk. Russell Kirk is a classical conservative thinker and philosopher. Worth the read if you're interested in true conservative thought. Thomas Sowell, Russell Kirk, the list goes on. Anyway, 3 pillars that he recognizes, and I like categorizing our conservative beliefs this way: the cultural, the political, and the economic. So I've said a couple of the cultural things, and you could just kind of keep going down that list. Hard work pays off. Meritocracies are important, et cetera. These are very basic stuff. You might have a hard time distinguishing that from what you would consider normal American values. But that's kind of the point. What are we conserving? The founding, normal American values. That's the idea. That's what we're conserving. Political. What do we mean? Well, I like to actually point people to the name of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. We are for a republic. They are for a pure democracy. And I can make that claim, and they would disagree, right? But I'd say, well, you kind of, it was under the progressive era that we changed the rules so that you have a popular vote to elect senators, as opposed to the way the founders wrote it, which was that senators were elected by the legislatures. Because the Senate was supposed to be representative of state governments, and the people's house is supposed to be representative of the people. And then we have a bicameral legislature just to make everything hard. That was the whole point, make everything hard. That's the kind of what a republic is. It's still a democracy, but there's tons of checks and balances to it. And Democrats want to get rid of those, right? They want to pack the Supreme Court, right? They want to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. And some Republicans do too, which is why I point at them and say, what are you doing? Because the shoe will be on the other foot, and you have to think ahead. You can't idealize these short-term gains for longer-term pain. And so a republic is what we have. Whereas it seems to me that Democrats more and more want a pure democracy. If you look at the UK, for instance, or most other countries, frankly, it's a winner takes all. The party that wins everything. They appoint the cabinet. They have the majority. It's just winner takes all. Like, we just don't have that. I mean, we have federalism, so states have their rights to fight back. We're kind of always in split government, even now, because Republicans don't have 60 votes in the Senate. So that's the political side. That's important. Lastly, the economic side. Free market economics. I like to say small business economics. We're for policies that make it easier for you to have a small business, right? Lower taxes, less regulation. Simple. Because you know who likes a lot of regulation? Big companies, because they have armies of lawyers to deal with it. Small businesses, not so much. So the economics, I think, is pretty straightforward. Less straightforward these days is the idea of tariffs. And so I think like Trump is accused often of like not being conservative because he's imposing tariffs, which are just a tax. And yes, they are just a tax. But I would remind everyone of a few things. It doesn't mean the tariffs are perfect, but let's say a few things about them. One, that was actually how our founders founded the country. The only taxation was indeed tariffs. Now, we've come a long way since then because we tax everything else now. So when you're taxing, when you have another tax, which is tariffs, that does just add to it. But to say it's like not conservative isn't really true. Conservatives maybe and liberals, I think with both parties, did become overly enamored with this idea of like unhindered free trade for a long time. And, in the aggregate, that is definitely positive, but you have to take into account the specific negatives. And specific negatives happen in places like, the Rust Belt and certain factories in certain towns. And so there's a backlash there, right? And so that's why what Trump is doing is it's really more centered around fair trade. We want free market kind of libertarian style economies here in our own country because everyone's playing by the same rules, more or less, depends on what state you're from, but more or less playing by the same rules. But we in China aren't playing by the same rules. So how can you have just total free trade? And so that debate is ongoing, and that's a healthy debate. I think there's some silly debates on the populist right that are like, they just remind me of Bernie Sanders. I mean, you're talking about, big corporations are behind everything, and the mergers are bad. I mean, like when you're praising, Biden, cabinet members over there, and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, like I'll call Tucker Carlson out. Tucker Carlson famously has always said he's more in line with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on economic policy than he is the Republican Party. So this, I would put him as sort of the spokesperson for this kind of new movement on the right, which is definitely not conservative and far more based in populism. And populism, to me, I'm just going to define it real quick. It's the art of telling you, the art of expressing to you your own feelings so as to make you feel happy, as opposed to telling you the truth. And to me, that's what liberals do, right? Hey, we can give you all this free stuff if you just vote for us. That's the basic Democrat message, right? Your health care is going up because mean Republicans won't just spend more money on you and give it to you. Like, it's always their message. And so when I see conservatives start to mimic that message, it's like, dude, stop. I get that maybe it's just bribing voters for their vote, and it's anti-conservative. And so that's why I think that's the civil. There's a lot more to the Civil War going on right now. Everyone wants to make it about Israel, and Israel may have been a flashpoint, but this thing's been going on for a long time, and has been going on for a long time, ever since the William F. Buckley days. William F. Buckley, a big conservative philosopher and thinker, the 50s, 60s, his huge battle with the John Birch Society, very similar to today. And you might argue Buckley is one of the founders of modern conservatism. When I said National Review is a good magazine and podcast, and they put out a lot. That is very much classical conservatism, and I think you can tell that you can trust that you're getting truth from them. But in many ways, nothing has changed. Our civil war on the right remains in full force, and although it's more about personality, it seems to me oftentimes, than it is about serious policy issues, because I look at the policy issues that have changed on the left, and there's just massive swings. Massive. Long answer, sorry, but that's the answer.
So you brought up healthcare, and the government shutdown. Did it actually achieve it did, right? It exceeded the longest shutdown in history?
Yep.
How close are we to that again? Because wasn't the vote to push it down the road here 45, 60 days? Aren't you guys butting up against that shortly?
Yep.
How do you foresee that going?
Well, I know how I want it to go. I'm actually meeting with Senator Cassidy tomorrow. So I will have already had that meeting by the time this podcast airs. I do help. Look, when you come to Congress, you kind of major. Like it's like going to school. You have freshman orientation, and then you pick your majors. Mine is energy policy, energy environment policy, and healthcare, and then all things national security and foreign affairs. Because I'm on the Intelligence Committee and I'm on Energy and Commerce. So I do healthcare a lot. I did a lot. We talked Medicaid reform, where we saved almost $1 trillion in the big beautiful bill. in order to make sure that your taxes didn't go up. I can speak in great detail on that because I helped make that. So I do know the healthcare debate pretty well. We need a deal. That timeline is late January. These extended premium tax credits that the Democrats keep complaining about, they expire in a couple days. Bear in mind, they never existed before COVID, and they want to blame us, for Republicans, for letting them expire, and thus the increase in premiums that people are seeing on the individual market. Now, that's a very, very dishonest claim. Every single report, including the CBO, it's a very small percentage of premium increases are due to the lack of extension of these tax credits, like 4%. So premiums are going up, and they've gone up like 80% since the start of Obamacare, because Obamacare destroyed the market. And it did so in the dumbest way possible. I mean, first of all, it made it impossible for insurance companies to be flexible with how they give insurance. Like one of the bills we just passed last week, we passed a series of healthcare bills because we wanted to do that before we left. We still have more to do, obviously, because we got to get a deal. But one of them we passed was, hey, let's allow people to build associations and pool themselves together, like a bunch of small businesses, and just like a corporation can, self-insure. So how people, so there's Obamacare, there's Medicare and Medicaid, and then there's what most people get their health care from is their work, because your company buys health insurance, and that's usually it's better. Why not allow people to, if you're not part of a big corporation, why not allow people to come together and do that? It's very simple things. These things were like executive orders under the first Trump administration, and of course reversed by Biden. So there's a lot of over-regulation that prevents any kind of innovation when it comes to the financing of healthcare. So that's number one. Number two is okay, so you're going to subsidize it because you think people need it. So I'll argue with Bernie. I'll say, no, it's not a right, but I do agree people need it. So we can agree there. And I want people to have access to healthcare. And that's already a law, basically. I mean, if you show up in an emergency room, they have to treat you. It's not like, so we've already decided this as a country. People need it. Doesn't mean it's a right, but I don't want to split hairs here, but we agree you need it. So, but the way, and like anything, it's an expensive good that cannot be afforded by everyone. So there's a few things, we think there's certain needs, healthcare, water, shelter, food. So how do we help people get those things usually? Well, we usually use a voucher system with a means testing. And so if you're below a certain threshold of poverty or, whatever, you get a voucher, you get a food stamps, you get a housing voucher, and then you go on the free market and then you purchase as you need to. What's weird about the way they do healthcare is there's no voucher at all. It's like the subsidies go to the insurance companies, not the people. And so it's like you're giving a grocery store a bunch of money. Then you're telling the grocery store you don't have to put prices on anything, but also figure out
why
who's
is it that
poor.
way? Why did they set it up that the subsidy went directly to the insurance company? Because another thing that happened with Obamacare
To get them on board,
is you went from
I think.
roughly 15 major insurance companies down to about 3. The market drastically reduced in size, scope, and scale, and it allows them to charge almost anything that they
PBMs.
100%. And again, I'm not a huge fan of government regulation, but I would be willing to have the conversation about having the government crack open that curtain a little bit and take a look into that system.
Well, many insurance companies just went out of business because of some of the reasons I just stated. It was just an impossible market. It was too stupid of a bunch of regulations to deal with, hence the consolidation. And
well,
so
for the ones that are left, very profitable.
Very profitable. So why are we subsidizing them?
That's my question to you. You're the one who writes these laws personally.
No, I didn't write this one. That's for sure. This one was written back when you and I were serving a Team 3 together, actually. So
no, I mean the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, the Affordable Care Act passed with 0 Republican votes. I mean that's demonstrably true. Having said that,
what we have not been able to do is offer the American public a solid solution. Everyone remembers that,
Correct.
and I don't because I wasn't in politics at the time, but it was right before I got here. Think 2017, right? What have Republicans been running on for 8 years of Obama? Repeal and replace, get rid of Obamacare. Okay, so make good on the promise. They come up with the American Healthcare Plan, which is I don't know what that means. To this day, I'm not even sure exactly what.
So, but here's a question for you, though. So, you guys are going to butt heads again, right? I have no reason to believe that the end state isn't going to be the same. Who benefits when the government shuts down, though?
Well, definitely no one. I want to give some optimism and tell you, I think, because I've had some Democrats agree to this basic philosophy. Because while we're sticking to this concept of who to subsidize, because you got to subsidize somebody, because it's a good that we know people need. Okay. Just like food, just like shelter. So the government has to step in some way. How? Well, we should do it the same way we do everything else, which is through a voucher. So how would we do that? Well, through existing structures, health savings accounts. Many of you listening might have a health savings account. It depends on your plan. My plan would be everyone has a health savings account, just like you have a social security number. What's a health savings account? Well, it's just another account where you can put money into and it's tax deductible. Everyone should have one. It should be normal, just like your social security number. That's number one. You do that, we're on our way. Why did Democrats make this dumb thing? I don't think they knew what they were doing. I think they needed to get the votes. They needed to appease insurance companies. I think people like Bernie Sanders, this is my cynical self speaking, I think they want the system to collapse. I can give proof of some of the votes he's taken against like price transparency, like things that we voted out of the House with like huge majorities. I mean, Democrats, Republicans, like Lower Cost, More Transparency Act, which would force hospitals and pharmacy benefit managers to actually list their prices. Imagine that, right? You can't have a market if you don't have price knowledge. So that was another thing we actually passed just last week too. So we took off some of the restrictions on how to deliver insurance. Like, I mean, like you don't need insurance for going into labor, right? But that's like what you're forced to buy. A 25-year-old doesn't need the same insurance as a 50-year-old. You know, we should be allowed to have different kinds of things, and like Obamacare destroyed that ability. Okay, the next thing you need is price transparency. For some reason, Bernie has killed this. In 2023, we passed that out of the House. Bernie Sanders, remember, senators, the Democrats were in charge of the Senate at the time. He killed that bill. To this day, he has no explanation. But that was a hugely bipartisan bill.
I would love to hear the argument for removing price transparency.
It's insane because I know what the actual argument is. He wants the system to fail so he can get Medicare for all. Because if the system fails, it's like, see, look, the only way to do this is the simplest way possible, which is there's a single insurer, and it's the government. Now, of course, there's problems, and that sounds great to people. It does, because it's so simple. And it's
the end state sounds great. Well, allowing the system to fail and the irrevocable harm that could happen to people's lives while that system is failing is,
not good.
It's like at what cost? Yeah, at what cost?
Not good. And I'll tell you, the end state doesn't, it sounds good, but it's not actually good either because you would just look like the UK and Canada. Those are the two. I can't hear you all of a sudden.
I'm not talking.
Oh, I thought you were moving your mouth.
I'm listening to you. Oh, okay. You can't see my mouth. You're blind as a bat.
That's true. I think that might be it too. Or maybe like your side is just freezing a little bit. Okay.
Don't worry about it. We're on Riverside. It records locally and then it uploads it.
Blind. Like why do we always label bats as, are they blind? I mean, they have sonar radar and stuff. Yeah.
Sonar is for underwater, radar. Dan.
No, it's just sonar. It refers to sound waves.
Underwater.
Not necessarily.
I think so.
I don't know. I don't know this for sure, and you don't know it for sure, and we're both like unsure how like hard to go in on this.
It's like, damn it, I'm actually at the limit of my knowledge.
Or is it? I think I'm right, but I'm not sure. Whatever. Let's talk about healthcare. I do know about healthcare.
Here's a thought.
I don't know about bat sonar, but
I don't either. Here's what I'd like to see. I would like to see that if the government shuts down again, every member of Congress and the Senate is no longer eligible for re-election.
Yeah, that wouldn't solve anything though. Because I'd be like,
you don't think you would have additional motivation?
My counter argument would be, I never voted to shut the government down, right? And not even when it suited me, I've never voted to shut the government down. This last government shutdown, literally Democrats voted to shut the government down. Like there's no.
Was there a vote to shut it down, or they refused to participate? I don't think anybody has a vote that says, "Hey, should we shut it down?"
No, it is. It's a vote. It's because we give them what's called a clean CR, which means a continuing resolution, which just says, "Look, we're not changing anything Nothing has changed about the budget because we need to have a budget. And this budget, by the way, we've been operating off the same budget, the same CR since the Biden days. So like Democrats really don't have any good reason not to vote for it. The only reason they have is because they want this other thing, which is the extended premium tax credits that they put into law without any Republican votes and also set them to expire. Let's be clear about why these things are expiring, because the Democrats wrote the law that way without any Republican votes. That's important to remember. This is back when they all had all three branches and they did it in reconciliation. So yes, there literally is a vote that it's like, it really is shut the government down or not, because that clean CR was only 7 weeks. So if it was a year-long CR, they could make the argument that we're not ready to negotiate because it's a year long. That's a signal. But it's 7 weeks. So it's very obvious that we're making this, that we're giving them, we're not putting any more conservative policies riders in it, or no poison pills. It's just a 7-week extension so that TSA workers can actually get paid, so that the military can actually get paid. The American people may have noticed or may not have noticed the government was shut down, right? It depends on what you do for a living.
It depends on how much you interface with it.
But it definitely mattered. I mean, you know what really pissed me? We had senators here, because it's really the Senate Democrats. I mean, in the House, we passed it. So, you're always voting against the opposing party. So I'm not even really blaming the Democrats in the House. Like, of course, they're going to vote against it because it's just like when you're in the minority, you just always vote against it. The Senate's a different place, though. They know you need 60 votes. They know that a simple majority doesn't pass it. So they did vote to shut down the government. Like, it is plain as day. And we had this battle over and over again on the TV screens. And somehow, in the Democrat media, liberal media was just trying to spin it and spin it and spin it. It's like, dude, it was just a clean CR, continuing resolution. So, and they claim that it was all because of this. In the end, they gave in because they finally the optics were looking bad on them. Finally, but no, nobody wins. It's dumb. And if you're going to do it, just own it. What I hated about that era was 40 days, right? And the Democrats were like, we're doing this because we need to save people's health care, but also we're not the ones doing it. It's the Republican shutdown. It's like, wait, what? You can't have it both ways. Because Trump shut down the government too, remember? And it was a long time, but he at least owned it. It was like, I'm doing it because I want the border wall paid for. That's it. That's my thing. Okay. That's an honest debate. That is what it is. I hated the way Democrats did this because it was very dishonest. You can't say you're not shutting the government down, then also say you're shutting the government down for a really good, noble reason. Sorry, no. And so we're facing that again. I do, again, on the optimistic side, I'm here in DC, working on this. And there's a lot of plans that we have, but there even are some Democrats who do agree with this concept. Let's go back to who gets paid, who do agree with this concept that money shouldn't be going to insurers where they can record profits. That money should be going into that HSA account, that health savings account that should just be universal and everyone should have one. And you can make that happen pretty quickly. Well, not super quickly, maybe a year and a half. And there's going to be deals that need to be made. Democrats are going to want things. They're going to want an extension on those extra premium tax credits, right? Just to which is not a crazy thing to want if you're going to change the system. But I would love the opportunity to actually change the system. Because if you do these three things, you create price knowledge with price transparency. You have to do that. You remove a lot of the regulatory strangles on the market, which they, in defense of insurance companies, and I don't want to defend them too much because they're, again, record profits, but the reason it has happened the way it has happened is because of government regulation, fundamentally. And also, again, coming back to how Obamacare was even created, the insurance companies just helped them write it and helped them. They're like, they convinced them and they were on their side and they helped lobby for it. You change all that with an HSA. And so that'll take care, and you can pay for your primary care doctor that way. You should be able to pay for your gym memberships that way because we care about preventative medicine too. And going to the gym is the best preventative medicine, unless you go there and just hang out on your phone and do nothing like you do. But for everybody else,
gym and diet.
Just had to just take a stab. I just couldn't.
You should, but you're the one who has video of you, attacking a heavy bag and working out like a child. You know what I mean? So I'd be cautious. I'll just insert that right into this episode. When was that video?
Right here. Jeez. Yeah.
I don't know. I'll find it.
We must watch everything I do. I love it.
Well, given the modern era of AI, if it doesn't exist, I'll be happy to create it and I'll make it look exactly like you.
Okay, well, just make me look good, though.
Well, that might be a stretch. There are limits to what AI can do.
Shut the All right. Anyway. So real quick, like in my ideal healthcare policy, and I do think I can get some I'm praying we can get some Democrats on board with this general idea, kind of see what they want in exchange. But like price transparency is already bipartisan. That should be easy. Second thing, HSAs. Universal HSAs, that's where the money goes. Stop subsidizing insurance companies, subsidize the patients. That's what Trump has put out as his basic concept as well. So we're in line with that, what the White House wants. And I've talked to Democrats that are like, yeah, that makes a lot more sense because they're not ideologically connected to Obamacare.
Will they say that publicly?
That's the difficult part. That's why we need this month to make this happen. The third thing you need to make a market complete is reinsurance. Okay, so because insurance premiums are also super high because we're concentrating on the super sick, and that's hard. That's why the logic of Obamacare was originally forcing people to be on it. Like, remember there was a big tax if you weren't on it, and the one thing Republicans were able to do was take that tax down to zero. But the reason that there was some like academic reasoning for doing that, because if everyone's not on it, then only the sick will be on it. Like your average 25-year-old's like, I don't really need health insurance. Forget it. So they're like, I'm not even going to pay into it. And so so you have less healthy people paying into the system, more sick people, more costs, insurance premiums keep going up. It's this death spiral is what it's called. So you have to have reinsurance or risk pools is another way to put that. And we at the state level, you can do that. And the states that have done that, because you have to get a waiver and all that. But the states that have done that have reduced their premiums quite a bit in each state. And the reason you have to do that is because, look, like maybe it's $1 million, maybe it's $1 million is the threshold. If insurance companies know that they're not on the hook for that million plus kind of treatment, like that person who has an acute sort of cancer or something catastrophic, they can lower overall premiums quite a bit. So reinsurance is huge, and that's really where government steps in. And again, this already exists. All of these mechanisms already exist. You do those three basic things, and you've got a really good deal. And you've kind of remade Obamacare in what I would consider in a conservative way. I wouldn't even call it Obamacare anymore. I mean, so and then you're also not doing this dirty dance of repeal and replace, which has drove everyone crazy because it wasn't well messaged. And people didn't really know what it meant. They just heard they were losing their health care. So it freaked everyone out. It didn't matter what political party you were from. I'm glad I wasn't in politics at the time, but the people who were, the congressmen who were like, never again. Never again are we trying that crap because it was just hell. Yeah, because your messaging sucked. This time the messaging is way easier. Here's a simple concept. Stop subsidizing big insurance and subsidize patients. We finally have a good message. Like,
I mean, the messaging is great. That's one thing now.
But the policy is very good, too. So
the policy
if
needs
we can
to
get that
good.
through and a deal made, that would stop a shutdown on January 30th.
Yeah, and hopefully it could impact currently the number one cause of bankruptcy in the U.S., which are healthcare costs.
Yeah. I mean, it would overall drive costs down. Over the long term. Like, you can't lie to people and tell them immediately, like, their premiums are going down. There's a lot of reasons healthcare is more expensive in the U.S. You don't go to Canada because you have a rare form of cancer. You certainly don't go to the U.K. You come to Houston. You can't. What we need to think about when we broadly think about healthcare and why I say a single payer system is bad, even though it sounds good to people, it sounds simple. So Canada would be the most obvious example for a single payer system. And UK would be the obvious example for, they have NHS. So it's basically the entire country has the VA. That's effectively what the UK is. That's how their health system works. Everybody who's a doctor or nurse actually works for the government. just like the VA. Okay. So those are and then a lot of other European countries maybe do a mix, and we could probably learn a thing or two from them. But in the end, we're a different country. We got to do it our way for our population. So the problem with UK and Canada, well, it's pretty obvious. You're talking about wait times are 6 months for an MRI. I can get one tomorrow, and I could probably get one pretty cheap too if I could stay away from a hospital. You're not going to get in the innovation. There's no reason to innovate. There's no reason to invest billions of dollars into that new therapy or drug because you're not going to make money off of it. That's why Republicans have fought against Democrats' propositions to often basically force negotiation. Negotiation is not even the right word based on the policies they put in place, but it really deters pharmaceutical companies from even taking those risks on issues like Alzheimer's, the really risky stuff. And don't get me wrong, they'll still make a bunch of money. I think
pharmaceutical companies are doing okay, Dan.
No, they will be. They will be doing okay all the time, because
I think all they have to do is
they're not the good guys. Don't get me wrong, but they're also people need to realize who the bad guys are. Everybody's kind of the bad guy here. That's the truth. The pharmacy benefit managers are the middlemen. We try to get price transparency on them. That's also bipartisan, and that was killed. The story behind how that was killed, it was Elon Musk smashing it. I don't even know why. We had that almost in law. Pharmacy benefit managers are like the middlemen between the pharmaceutical manufacturers and the actual
I know.
people.
I've done an episode on it, and I had somebody sit down who worked in that world, and he basically creates private insurance pools for small businesses.
It's
and we were talking
very
about
difficult to understand and very murky. And so our first step as congressmen, as legislators, this is bipartisan. Can't blame except for Bernie Sanders. It's bipartisan except for Bernie Sanders. Again, because he wants the system to fail. But bipartisan legislation, we've put it out of our committee, and it would force price transparency on how they do rebates, how they do all of their things. Because we can't really fix anything until we even know what's going on under the hood. So they don't even make anything. At least pharmaceutical companies make something, and they're the ones who invest billions of dollars to actually make the thing. And so there's not going to be an incentive to invest it if you're not going to get your money back. That's just normal. That's just normal marketplace behavior. And I still want them to make things. And not only do I want them to make things, I want them to make the things that we need the most. Because you're right, they still do okay. And they'll do okay because once they're under these new rules of you're going to have to negotiate this price and you're losing your patent. We're going to tell it, the government's going to tell you what price you can charge. It doesn't matter that you spent $10 billion making it. We're still going to say you can only charge this price, at least for Medicare. And so they're not making their money back. And so what are they going to do? Well, they're still going to make money. They're just going to reinvent old drugs. They're going to stick to very safe bets where they know what the profit margins are. They're not going to invest in this super crazy idea that on fixing Alzheimer's or this rare form of cancer. They're not going to invest in that. We've already seen it. We can prove this now because after the Democrats passed that legislation back in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is a couple of years. We've had a few years of data now. We can see how much research and development investment has dropped, especially in pediatric cancer of all places. So yeah, screw the kids. That's what happens when you don't have a true market. So you do need to have a true market in healthcare, but you also have to have a market that gives people what they need. Well, that's hard. You could consider healthcare like a luxury good that you want people to have. Doesn't make it a right because we have to be very specific and particular with our terms, but it is something we agree they need. And so how do you have both? How do you have a system that delivers it to people, but also still has that innovative edge? Because we are the last country innovating. And we have access to, I think, there's stats out there. I mean, England, all these Western countries have access to 60% of the stuff we have access to. If you're a Canadian or a Brit, and I'm just using those countries because they're close to our country, right, from many perspectives. If they have a rare form of cancer, they're coming to Houston. We're not going there. If we want to buy random drug X for cheaper, yeah, we'll go to Mexico or Canada. But when it comes to true care, you're still coming to the U.S. So you have to balance these things.
Depends on the type of true care. It's interesting.
Well, for those really rare diseases. I mean, you're going to Houston for MD Anderson. I mean,
Sure.
Or hell,
And
even
then
an MRI, that you need, you're going to come across the border here.
Depends. I mean, let's look at stem cell treatment, things of that nature. You know, I'm good friends with a guy named Scotty who owns Chipsa down in Tijuana. You know, an MRI down there is running them $100, something like that.
Well, Mexico's definitely. Well, Mexico's a free market, though. Well, and they also have no right to healthcare in Mexico. You got to pay in cash before you get treated in Mexico. So that's why.
Well,
Mexico,
but they also have access down there too to some treatments in the U.S. I mean, I'm not saying that we're not innovative, but in a lot of ways,
Mexico's like the opposite end of the spectrum. So it's interesting to bring Mexico up because it's like there's no rules, right? So it's a true free market, and they don't even say.
I don't know if there's no rules, but there's certainly, I know people whose lives have been changed by the treatment they were able to get along the lines of stem cells because, you know, it's not approved in the U.S. And also, you know, to see a divestment from child cancer from Big Pharma, but yet they're posting record profits, you know, it's tough to square that one.
Can you make them do it? I mean, now you got to pass more laws.
I'm not trying. What I'm saying is it's hard for me to square. It's like, okay, they'll divest in children's cancer, but then how are they still posting record profits? If there's no innovation, how are they able to consistently year over year over year increase their bottom line?
First of all, keep in mind, it's not necessarily Big Pharma. It's all biomedical startups. It's the true innovation comes from these smaller biomedical startups, like, you know, taking a risk. And then a bunch of other rich people pushing money into it. That's where the investment is dried up. Big Pharma is going to keep doing what Big Pharma does, putting out their basic stuff and just, you know, making sure that, like you said, they keep their profits. What has taken the hit is our innovative capacity for startups.
Oh, you're
because
talking
what
about
happens is the startups happen,
okay.
right? They get their investments, and then Big Pharma maybe buys them up. That's always their hope, right? That kind of stuff is drying up because investors are like, well, you can't even make your money back, even if you're successful. And also what you talked about with our inability to get things like stem cells or psychedelic stuff. Also
that's a good one too.
Obviously, you know, I've been a champion of that. And stem cells. I actually have a bill that would tell the FDA to create a separate approval pathway for regenerative medicine, i.e. stem cells. So we are working on that. One of the reasons the FDA has been so slow to approve stem cells is because it's hard for whoever's asking for that approval to like say what it's for, you know, because there's sort of this like general idea that stem cells are good for longevity and all sorts of things. But when you seek FDA approval, you have to be saying this therapy is for this. And so that it's run into issues that way. And it's kind of dumb, honestly. I've been arguing with the FDA over this for years. I agree with you. But again, like, what's the actual problem here? It's over-regulation. That's the problem. That's why we don't have the easy stem cell treatments, which by all estimates seem harmless. You know, they might not. I don't think they're end all be all.
I don't think they're the panacea that they're pitched at. But
I think they're harmless. And you know, the FDA has a mandate of safe and effective. And so, you know, I could argue that the effective part should be up to doctors and frankly insurers like Medicare. So CMS should really be talking about the effectiveness. And so when a drug gets approved, let's say stem cells, if it makes it through the FDA, it's like, hey man, it's not over. You got to make it onto the list of approved items of CMS. CMS is Medicare, Medicaid, and because that's what most other insurance companies take their cues off of. If Medicare and Medicaid aren't covering it, then we're not going to either, because you know that's just sort of how they. It's not always true, but there tends to be a relationship there, and so yeah, the problem again is like this sort of overregulation, you know, because you have to prove stem cells are effective for this thing, and that's been hard to prove, I think. Psychedelics, I think there's going to be a lot more evidence. That's why I put that bill forward a couple of years ago. It took years for me to get that done, and we finally got it done. And now it's like opened it up to the floodgates. I mean, we took the stigma off by getting my bill signed into law. My bill was simply a bill to force the Department of Defense, not just give them a chance to, but force them to do clinical trials and allow active duty service members to engage in those clinical trials on psychedelics, MDMA, psilocybin, 5-MeO, DMT, and ibogaine. Those are what we gave them. But I have to fight every year to make sure it gets more money getting appropriated. But then you see what Texas just did, put $50 million behind it. So like, it's amazing. And I think our leadership here created that. That's why I wanted to start with the DOD on that particular issue, because it's the biggest institution in the world. And if we can destigmatize this treatment there, it'll trickle down. And I think I've been proven right. So we're going to continue to fight that.
I like it. Yeah. I would love to see people be able to see that treatment without having to go across border. I mean, specifically, we both have mutual friends that have had life-changing, life-altering results from that. At the very least.
That's what got me on.
Yeah, let's take a look at it.
I had a really weird night where it was like 2021, because I started on this journey, maybe 2021 sounds right. And I was having dinner at my buddy's house who lives near Annapolis. He's a former Marine. I know him from San Diego. And actually grew up with my wife, and we're talking, and I was like, all right, we're having dinner, and I'm like, are we having a beer? And he's like, I'm not drinking. I'm like, what do you mean you're not drinking? and so he tells me, yeah. So I've never heard of Ibogaine before or anything about it. He tells me the whole story. I'm like, holy crap, that's insane. Wow. I wonder who else I know. It turns out I end up knowing a lot of people. But that same night, I get in the elevator, and I literally get an elevator pitch. And yes, I'm using the word literally correctly, unlike everybody else who uses it. I literally get elevator pitched by Jonathan Lubecki, who's an activist for psychedelics. Anyone in the space might know him. He's like, hey, I know who you are. So I'm going back to my apartment in D.C., just to be clear. I'm in the elevator going back to my apartment in D.C. at the end of this night. And he's like, I know who you are. I've tried to kill myself 5 times. I did this psychedelics treatment. He was talking about MDMA. And to save my life, that's why my kids have a father. Like, you got to look into this. I'm like, what is going on? It was like, okay, like that was is this a God thing? Is someone just telling me what to do? So for years I battled it and, had to learn how to get things through, legislatively to really make it happen. And we could talk about a civics course if you'd like on that, but eventually finally got it through a couple of years ago. But again, still have to fight appropriations every year. So that's what we'll continue to do.
Well, we better fast forward to modern day, because people are going to be so pissed at us. For the last hour, we've been talking about policy.
Just nerdy healthcare stuff.
Well, people want to know, how did you become the most hated congressman currently serving, who is somebody who is anti-free speech?
I hate you. Anti-free speech.
Pro-lobbying, funded by Israel. And is internationally going out having alcohol-related incidents. I think I caught them all.
Didn't catch all of them, but
no, of course.
you forgot we should trading.
I just assumed that we would, of course, open with that. And you also threaten journalists with their lives. So we should probably. Yeah. So today is the
kind of regret. I mean,
you should.
It was a hot
you look
mic.
like an asshole on that.
I mean, it was a private. I thought I was in private. It was just like
I don't know if you have an expectation of privacy.
I was a SEAL longer than I've been a congressman. I'll say that. But yeah, I was dumb. I regret it. You should never trust.
Hold on, I've heard that
anything.
there's something that accurately describes what you just said. Oh, it's an excuse. Yeah, we're not going to use those.
No,
we're just going to say I'm a dumbass.
I said I'm sorry. Jeez.
Who did you say you were sorry to? Was that caught on hot mic?
No. Saying it to you.
Yeah, okay.
I'm never going to apologize to Tucker. It's not.
Okay, so hold on. So today is the 29th. This episode is going to come out on Friday just because that's my release date. On Friday, you are going to be traveling to, I think he lives in Nashville, right? You're going to go on Sean's show in Nashville. I don't know his release schedule, when he'll put it out. I'm assuming pretty timely. Yeah. But actually,
as people are watching this, me and Sean will be sitting down, ideally. I think
probably
our lawyers have figured out the things by now.
So you reached out because you saw me talking on Mic Drop and Ritland's podcast. And so we reconnected. You're like, hey, we talk all the time. I'm like, no, we've texted a few times.
Well, I invited you to do these cool inauguration events, and you didn't come.
Over text. And I just simply said there's a difference.
Why do I have to? What's wrong with texting?
No, I am just saying when I was answering to Mike, I was just trying to set – I believe in transparency as well. I'm like, listen, I know Dan. I was his buzz instructor. We served together Team 3. We hadn't talked like we are now. We had texted a few times, and I said that. And I said, hey, I've met Sean one time in person, shook his hand and said, just want to be able to put a face to a name. I'm Andy. And that was that. It was actually at your best friend's Christmas party, also known as Tucker. who I actually didn't meet while I was there, have never said a word to. How I ended up getting an invite to that is still beyond me. What I'm like, I put that into an experience. I'm like, whatever, man. I went there with my wife. We got to go see Nashville. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that's it. He and I have texted.
In Nashville. That's so random.
Yeah. It was an Alp, which I think is a nicotine. Yeah, it's a Zyn competitor.
Oh, that's right. He has like this whole thing. Okay.
And I've texted with Sean a few times. And again, and I just lay that out. You reached out directly, which I thought was awesome. So here we are chatting after talking directly.
I texted you, which apparently you're not a fan of. I'll try.
No, I just think there's a difference between talking and texting. I think everybody would agree.
Yeah.
Plus texting in the written word, and actually this kind of ties in to what's going on, and I'm sure what you and Sean will discuss. The written word is far too easy for me to misconstrue somebody's intent or tone.
Yeah. Fair enough. Although you missed out on inauguration. It was, even though they canceled it, it was a good time. I wish you'd come. That was the last time I texted you.
Dude, I'm not a big fan of... yeah, of course I have the text. I'm not a big fan of... I didn't mean to ignore you. If I did, I apologize. And to anybody else I haven't texted back, I apologize. It is not intentional.
I apologize to everyone not texted back.
That's a good blanket one. Like, listen, I didn't mean to not get back to you. I'm just an asshole and sometimes don't manage my time well.
Yeah,
I had no interest in going to the inauguration, and it has nothing to do with who was going to be leaving or going into office.
Just messing.
It's just not my thing to be around that stuff, man.
It wouldn't be. I totally get that. Okay, so where do we begin on this? I actually want to begin with I know you say it as a joke, but people say it very seriously. Why are you the most hated congressman? And I'm like, maybe in the online troll world, but I've been doing this for 7 years, and I've been very noticeable since I was on Saturday Night Live. Okay, so it's not
which was a great way to handle that whole situation, by the way. Props.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm. We can talk about like how that. I think we have talked about this, but I was like one of the first people on your podcast, I think. Right? Like, so we probably talked about this at length. It was kind of a perfect storm of like how we were able to handle it because of the way SNL did it, and there was a lot of things that I wish you could reproduce, but you can't. It was nice, but my point is like I'm noticeable, and in 7 years, two people I can think of 2 times where someone has just come up to me while I'm out in public to have anything negative to say. I can think of a bazillion times because it happens any time I go. It's not like there is no case where I won't be recognized. It's always positive. So there is ground truth and there is internet truth. I'll say that. Yeah. And those 2 times, I remember both of them because like there's only twice. Now there's other times that were like planned, like a planned activist is like cornering me at an event or something like that. But even that's only a handful, but that's kind of a different thing. That's not like a citizen being like, you know what? I see him he's on aisle 10. I don't like that guy. No, they come up to me, but it's never negative. One kid came up to me, I was in the bathroom and he started yelling at me about the Jews. Okay. So that was interesting. And then another guy was just at the gym. Like I was at the gym and he's like, it literally was like, I don't like what you said about Tucker, and you shouldn't speak that way. And I just said like, well, I didn't mean to say it publicly. And that was that. And so that's literally it. So I'll address that one. I want to say that first, because I do live in the real world. The media people, and they actually don't. When I go see Sean, he's gonna have a huge security detail, and I'm gonna be alone.
Does he have a security detail?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, I met the guy at that party. I have no idea.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I'm sure I'll see it. Now, so is he going out like I go out in the regular public? Is he doing town halls? Like, I do. I am in the public, and so I have a good thumb on the pulse. So no, I don't think I'm actually hated. And also, if that were true, then how do I keep winning? Re-election. So that is what it is. That doesn't take away from the fact that I am like clickbait for people online of hatred. And I think what frustrates me about it is that it's often for things that aren't even true. Not even often. It's like almost always for things that aren't even true. Real quick, like you mentioned the Mexico City thing. It's like, wow, the headline from this crap liberal journalist right here on the Hill Jake Sherman, was so unbelievably dishonest. It was such a perfect example for people of why you can't trust some of these people in the media. The headline is, top Republicans ban Crenshaw from international travel for 90 days due to alcohol-related incident in Mexico. And then it's a paywall, right? So you can't even access the story until you subscribe to their stupid Punchbowl News. That's what they call it, Punchbowl News. Super reputable. Just this particular reporter is just famous for just trying to dig up dirt on everybody around here, and then trying to just give you this like locker room gossip. Like that's his job. Now the story wasn't all that inaccurate. There's some inaccuracies to it, but it literally says like what the incident was. I laughed at a toast, like an afternoon toast, because at the end of meetings with Mexican generals, in this case, the Secretary of Defense, we're talking about military aid, we're talking about the cartels. Again, I'm like, that's my thing. I focus a lot of energy on the cartels. I'm the one who's writing legislation on the cartels to kind of back up what the president's doing. I've been doing this for years. This is my 4th trip to Mexico. And so we always have discussions about U.S. military cooperation and what that should look like. And they're often tense because Mexicans are very much like, no, our sovereignty is our sovereignty. You can never come here, ever. And sometimes they say that this administration is a lot different. We can talk cartels policy all you want. But for this story, it's like, okay, at the end of that meeting, like they often do, because I've done this a bunch down in Mexico, they always bring shots of tequila out as like a farewell. It's like 3 p.m. And then the military guys give an inappropriate toast that apparently offended some woman staffer who knows. I mean, but me and there was another Democrat congressman with me. And he's like, that went great. Like, he's Mexican. This is Representative Luke Correa from California, Mexican descent, has family in Mexico. Like, he knows how to do diplomacy in Mexico. We're a good team. We both speak Spanish. So this entire meeting's in Spanish. And by the way, that's in the story. And so like, I'm like, Jake, you were so dishonest. So I just like posted up like headline versus the actual story. And I'm like, how are these two things the same? How the hell is that an alcohol related incident? And I'm like, 90-day travel ban? Well, then how was I approved to go to Lebanon like back in October? Which I was. The only reason I didn't go is because the damn Democrats shut the government down, so we can't travel. But, it was just untrue. And then they came out with another total fabricated story that it was the CIA complaining about my behavior. They don't complain like that. And like, we're going to show, hopefully by the time this airs, we've got that story out, which debunks it. But it's just people just trying to stir things up. And there is something about my name, which is just clickbait. I should get a tattoo. Clickbait. Hashtag clickbait. None of it's true. The CIA never wrote a cable about me. I mean, they do routine cables. But I talked to John Radcliffe, the director of the CIA, about it. I talked to the chief of station who wrote the cable. They're like, none of these complaints were ever in there. We literally just say, it's 2 paragraphs, and we literally just say, so-and-so met with so-and-so. Like this is what happened, 5 Ws type of stuff. We would never, like in 30, a chief of station say, in 30 years, we've never seen anything like what is being reported, because it doesn't make sense for us to do that. Like imagine the CIA was just writing and then leaking derogatory information on members of Congress. It doesn't happen. And this stupid reporter and whoever is working with him, who I know who is working with him, and will hopefully reveal that one day, is it's a discredit to the CIA as well, because it makes people think that's what they do. So that's just a couple of the things you mentioned. Where else do we go from there?
I mean, let's talk about the Tucker thing, because that one, I don't know if you're ever going to escape that one. And it does tie into, and so when it comes to your conversation with Sean, I'm an observer like everybody else in this. I have no insider spit. I don't have any insider beta. I actually, thinking about what was asked of me by Mike, I think I actually said that, well, the term I was looking for was the Streisand effect in the moment sitting down with Mike. I couldn't remember it in the moment. But what I essentially said was, by you bringing it public, that it brought more attention to it. And when we spoke, you said that you sent a cease and desist letter, and Sean made the decision to actually be public about that cease and desist letter. So I think I had that one backwards, because I actually did hear about this through the video that Sean put out. And in looking at it and taking a little bit more time, I guess that would be his choice to put that out, or he could have, I'm assuming, handled that directly with you without, I mean, nobody, I guess, would have known unless they would have said something about that. So whether that's
we should
the
go over
case
the
or
whole
not,
timeline just for clarity, because I think there's a lot of opaqueness about this whole thing, because it's like his version is definitely glides over a lot of facts. But do you want to talk about the Tucker thing's very, I don't think there's much to talk about. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but
it ties in. We don't have to talk about that much. You're an idiot for saying that. You're an elected member of Congress. Don't talk like that in the future. And
you're
people
right. You're
won't
right.
have
I said it. Like I
clickbait.
said, I regret that one. It was a hot mic. No journalist in the U.S. would actually ever post that, even the worst ones that I was just talking about. But
Let's not blame it on the journalist. How about no congressman should ever talk like that?
I'm telling you what happened, though, and it's like I was just speaking like I'm back in the team room, and I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done it, right? Because it just created this dumb firestorm. I will, to Tucker's credit, and Tucker and I are not friends at all, and he's just gotten worse and worse. But
were you guys ever friends?
No, I mean, he's been trashing me since 2022 for no reason.
I'm just curious. I don't know the full backstory.
He just started
between
trashing me on a monthly basis starting in 2022. And I never even responded about it. Never sent it until he got fired from Fox, because it was too much. Like, I mean, you just can't fight that battle. He's got the primetime show on Fox. You just got to let it happen. And so he's been slandering me for years. People would ask, well, why doesn't he like you? And I'm like, well, why doesn't he say why he doesn't like me? How come he never says? How come he never says what he disagrees with me on? He just says I'm a stupid idiot, or I Patch McCain, or I'm evil. He's literally said I'm listing words like sinister. He's called me sinister. A liberal. He's a liberal. He just kind of throws it out there and then leaves it there. Never says why. And people are like, why does he not? I'm like, maybe the fact that you have to ask why is an indication that there is no why, and that it's.
Have you guys ever talked?
No, I won't talk to him.
You wouldn't sit down and talk with him over a cup of coffee?
No, we don't respect each other. There has to be some kind of mutual respect. It might have to be built. This is the one thing I'll give him. I'll give him this. He never took that thing as an actual threat. He knew he wasn't being threatened, and he didn't even take it that way. I'll give him credit on that one thing. He said, why don't you do an interview with me? And I was like, because we don't respect each other. That's why. And there's I'm not even sure what you want to debate or have a debate on. And let's look at the Ted Cruz interview with Tucker Carlson. How'd that go? I mean, it wasn't good for either of them. Because Tucker will drag you in. He's going to drag me down to a point where I'm going to have to start fighting at that level, and it's not a good look. Why do it? So that's why. He's going to drag me into the mud and force me to be like, okay, well, you know what? You're the one who's emailing Hunter Biden, asking for help to get your son into Georgetown. Why are you doing that? That's kind of weird. And what kind of help are you hoping for? Because that kind of help was putting Hollywood actors in jail not too long ago, if I recall. So why are you friends with Hunter Biden? I thought you were against the DC elite. Turns out you are the DC elite, right? See, that's how the conversation would get so ugly. And so with Sean, I don't think it has to get that ugly. I hope not. I hope not. Again, I'm not going to predict anything because this show will be coming out as we're doing the show with Sean. But certainly it's not the goal to make it ugly. Want to go over the timeline real quick so we just clarify the Sean Ryan saga for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So about a year and a half ago, it sounds about right. For some reason on his show, he's interviewing Tulsi Gabbard at the time. And he just kind of makes his comments about how congressmen get really rich and, they're not accountable. And you look like, how can they hire Steve Aoki at their birthday party to play a private party? I mean, that's crazy. Now, he never said my name. And my friends showed it to me, my friends from Six showed it to me. It just happens to be true. A lot of my friends.
Hold on. We're going to address your vernacular.
You can make fun. You can make fun of me all you want. That's fine because it's you. But whatever.
I'm talks like that. First off, my boys from Six. Are you a child?
It's a private message to another seal.
It's not private. You have no expectation of privacy on Instagram.
Well, that's fine, but I also stand by it. It's a completely it's not a threatening message in the least, which is the whole point here. Okay,
be better than your boys from 6. Oh, I'm going to.
Whatever. You don't say your boys. I say my boys. Why don't you say your? Look,
because I don't talk like a child.
Oh my God. You just don't have any friends, I think. I think that's the problem.
I mean, fair enough. I wouldn't blame people for not. I mean, trust me, I look at myself in the mirror every day.
Make fun of for how it's worded, but what you cannot deny is that there was nothing threatening about it, right? And so, anyway.
I don't have the ability to do that. But here's the thing. I have to be clear.
Let's stick to the timeline.
Because
we got to get
let's stick to the timeline, but I have to be clear about this too. I don't have the ability to determine the way that somebody should or shouldn't take a message, right? Because the message wasn't directed. I can have an opinion on it, but I can't have an opinion for him, right?
Well,
like
legally speaking, it's just from a legal perspective.
Legally speaking, I'm going to leave it to I'm going to leave it to the legal experts because I am not one, and I am not interested in playing a game of like, well, you probably think that he didn't. It's like I can't engage in that because I wasn't the recipient of the message.
Well,
I'm going to mock you and make fun of you.
Let's clarify the timeline so that, and then I think you might be able to judge. So he says that he doesn't say my name, but he's obviously talking about me because I just had my 40th birthday party and it was a campaign event, and we did go to Steve Aoki's show with a bunch of it was like 15 SEALs there, there was a bunch of supporters, donors, like. So we advertised it, and I think he was assuming. Like, I don't know that he thinks he's lying, or I don't know still to this day, because he never responded to this. It was a private message. I don't, for what it's worth, it is a private message.
Do you know when he saw it, though? I mean, because again, I get a lot of private messages that I don't see. And I've had some where I see him years later.
I mean, we can see that it says seen. So, I mean, we know he saw it because he talks about it a year later. So, in any case, he's never responded to it.
Yeah, but it's just dumb to make the assumption of when he saw it,
Let's say what the message is real quick, okay? Because I have it basically memorized at this point.
It says boys from 6. That was it. They're coming for you.
That's not what it says. Not even a little bit what it says. Okay.
That's what I saw online.
It says something like, hey, Sean, you have the ability to reach out to your fellow team guy if you've got questions about how I'm, quote, getting rich. My boys at 6 told me you took an indirect swipe at me. It sounds like you're going off trendy narratives instead of facts. That's the message. Okay. Never responded to. He never responded to it. A year later, he's got Matt Bissonette on his show. And for some reason, Bissonette brings my name up about books. That's who knows why. I don't even want to address it. And then Sean takes the opportunity to be like, yeah, Dan Crenshaw's just one of that. And he just a lot of swear words about me. Obviously, he doesn't like me. We've never spoken. He's never responded to my offer. Because I sent him 3 sentences. The first sentence says, why don't you just reach out to me if you have a problem with me? That's what the first sentence says. The second sentence is, my boys at 6 told me about this. What I'm doing with that message is I'm saying, look, we do have something in common. Right? We're both SEALs. Like, I've told you that twice. That's 2 sentences of saying that. Like, it was, and to take that as a threat is nonsense, and we all know it. Especially if you're a SEAL. Like, I'm just saying, these guys told me about it. There's not even close to being a threat. And then the third sentence is, you've got your facts wrong. That's it. That's the message. And so to come out a year later and be like, and to say, oh yeah, he messaged me and he says I had the courtesy of not using his name, which he did not use my name, which is also why I never publicized anything. Just sent him a private message. And so this time though, he's like, yeah, I was dead. And then he sent me a message right after I'd said that, because again, so he repeats the claim of Steve Aoki, me hiring him, which I never did. Just let's make that clear. Never hired Steve Aoki. We went to the show. That's it. So he makes the claim again and then says, yeah, he was so mad about it. He said he would have his boys from 6 come and kick my ass. And I was like, you're using very specific language, which was never said. And you can't say it was misconstrued. Like in a conversation, you might be like, well, I thought that's what he meant from the conversation. This wasn't a conversation. This was one text. And a very, very clear one that certainly did not say anything about kicking ass or whooping ass, which is what the word Sean used. So I have a few choices now, right? Like I do every single day when someone lies about me publicly. Choice 1 is do nothing, okay? That's the vast majority of the time, that's the choice I make because I can't throw a rock at every barking dog nipping at my ankles. But you can't. Sometimes I have to because it has a lot of engagement or it's on a ginormous platform like Sean Ryan has built. To his credit, good job. you got a huge, huge podcast. And so I can't have like two things. You know, I got a 2-year-old daughter who's not old enough to read or understand this stuff, but she will one day. And I don't want, so the reason I fight all of these lies is because one day she will know how to research that. And I will fight for my own reputation, but also I represent people. You can't have people thinking their representative is literally threatening to conspire to get a bunch of guys from an elite unit in the military and go assault another person, which is a crime. So
that's the legal threshold that was crossed?
For me, yes. When you're accusing me of a crime, things change, right? You can say I suck at healthcare. You could say so much crap about me. I mean, and it's all protected speech. But you can't accuse people of crimes and get it. There's an accountability there. That's why people get sued for libel and for defamation. And also, we're in a case here where I can actually prove that you know what you were saying was a lie. Usually a cease and desist is designed, and I've sent a few of these, because look, here's my second option. Once the first option can't be done because it's too big, right? So then I have 2 more options. Respond on social media and correct it that way. That's not great, because that just creates a whole, that's not a fun option. Or just send them a letter. Hey, lawyers, take care of it, which is what I did.
You have a third option, which is plugging your laptop in because it's telling me you're at less than 20%.
We'll get it. We might have to. Yeah, so you got 2 options, and you really only use the lawyer option, letter option, if there actually is a defamation issue. And so that's only been used when people lie about me doing insider trading, or lie about, like in this case, lie about me conspiring to assault them. Those are both illegal things. You're calling me a federal criminal. So I have to fight back. And I've already debunked the insider trading thing 100 times. But of course, not everyone has seen it, and so they can say, and this was Sean's argument, he's like, I can just say, well, I mean, I've read it, I don't know what I'm saying, I just read it. I don't think what he didn't understand is I wasn't really going after him about insider trading. The letter was all about the fact that you're claiming I threatened to assault you, and it's just not true. Like, we have all the evidence to show that, and no reasonable person would think that message even comes close to an actual threat. The Tucker, you can try to tie the Tucker.
Is that the legal standard?
They're so unrelated.
Is the legal standard?
The legal standard is different for public figures. You might even consider, like, you probably fall into the public figure standard. It is higher, and so as a public figure, you have to prove that they knew what they were saying was false. You don't have to prove that as a regular citizen. It can just be defamatory, and you can have damages. That's for regular citizens. For people in public, any public figure, and I'm not sure what the legal definition of public figure is. I know I'm one. You're probably one. I don't know. Sean definitely is. We have a higher threshold.
What was the result you were trying to get from the letter?
I wanted him to go on his show. The demand letter, the letter says what the result we want is, which is, hey, go on your show and correct this. Say, hey, you know what? Dan never actually threatened me. Here's the text isn't threatening. I don't know why I said that. It was dumb. Let's move on. That's what I want.
What if he doesn't feel that way?
Well, that's why we're going to have the podcast, right? That's why we're going to do it. Because I want to understand that. So, well, obviously he already made it pretty clear he doesn't feel that way, right? Because he took that letter and made it seem like he was the victim. It's an interesting tactic. We call it wound gathering, sort of a social psychology trait. And you see it a lot in leftist propaganda, Black Lives Matter will burn down cities, but then say, well, no, my actions are justified and they were provocative, but I'm part of this group that everyone likes, and not BLM. No, not everyone likes BLM, but I'm part of a minority group, so you can't attack me. That's kind of what Sean's doing, and the group he's hiding behind is literally the people. He's acting like he's just this poor little guy. It's like, no, dude, you're a top 10 podcaster. You do have accountability. You have to have some level of accountability for what you say. This isn't the big government coming after the little guy. It's not even close to that. Again, I'm going to be showing up there surrounded by his security and his lawyers, and I won't have any of that with me. I will have one little guy who's filming it from our end so that we can ensure that no crazy edits get made. That's the deal we made. So this playing victim narrative was a little strange, to be honest. especially when like this entire situation was literally manufactured by Sean. Like he's making up things, like maybe assuming things, whatever, but it's not true. Making up that I got rich, that's not true at all. Is inferring that I got rich illegally, that's not true, because I didn't get rich in the first place and I never did anything illegal. So you're calling me a criminal, or inferring that I'm a criminal at least. You're saying I hired Steve Aoki at my birthday party. It says no signal.
All right, so you were talking about how wound collecting and how you were trying to portray yourself as a victim in this situation.
Not me, Sean.
No, you. I heard you. You were saying that you, as the congressman, are portraying yourself as the victim.
No, that's not what happened at all.
Yeah. So on the wound collecting front, do you think that Sean honestly is legitimately playing a victim, or he took the demand letter that he received in a way that you didn't intend it to? I mean, and again, I'm trying to view this. I was exposed to this over the internet, just like everybody else was. You think there's any chance of that?
It seems to me there's a strategy behind his response very clearly, and the strategy is kind of easy. We've seen it. He'd done this before because there was some other case, because we were looking at past history, where he used a very similar tactic of kind of playing, but like acting like this is like a David versus Goliath type fight. Like, I'm here to fight for free speech. I won't be silenced. It's like, whoa. No one is silencing you. Like, you just can't call me a criminal. Like, that's not protected speech. Like, I don't want to have to give you like a First Amendment course here, but that's just not. And, you can criticize me. You can say I suck. You can say I'm stupid. You can say so many things. But I can take action when you're accusing me of criminal activity. Yeah. That's about the only time I can. I mean, if you also, like, I don't know, like, there's other defamatory claims too, but like for my purposes, the only ones I've actually had my lawyers go after people for is the ones that are criminal. And that's really just insider trading, and then this.
So let's take into the insider trading.
Yeah. Because it does, that is important, because for some reason, Sean believes all that. And that's what's caused all this in the first place. Him just like he keeps upping the ante, and that's why as people watching this, that's why me and Sean are sitting down in Tennessee at this very moment, I hope.
Do you think people who are in elected office should be able to trade?
I'm co-sponsoring the bill that says you can't trade individual stocks.
That's not an answer.
It is. It's a yes. Individual stocks.
You think they should be able to trade, or should not?
No, I co-sponsor the bill that would eliminate it.
Okay.
Because I don't care. Because what people don't understand is, like, if I pull out my brokerage account on my app right now, I have around $30,000 in it. And I just have the numbers pulled. I basically pulled every single statement from my entire time in Congress, and so that we could like really get the math right. Because I think we spoke privately about this, so let's say it publicly. Everyone knows about my finances all the time because I disclose them by law. By law, I have to tell you every time I've made a trade above $1,000, and then you pick when you make that disclosure, you have to say what you traded and the value of it. Now, the value
part was interesting to me. I was not aware that they allowed you to report in a range, and this range is a wide swath.
And that's the problem. Like I wish, that's what we should change. Honestly, I'd rather just report what my actual value was. Why not? I mean, because here's the thing: that range is 1,000 to 15,000. That's the first range, and then it goes like 15 to 30, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, I'm in that range of like, well, a lot of my, So if I'm in that range, 1,000 to 15,000, the truth is, pretty much everything I bought, and I've done two major like times. There's only like two times I've really purchased a group of stocks. It was when the market crashed after COVID. Seemed like a good time. Because haven't been in the stock market before that. I'd been out for a while, I was just kind of, it's never been a big thing for me. So it's just this whole attack on me is so strange to me, because like, I've never really been in the business of trading. You have to be a trader to inside trade. Like, you have to be trading pretty often, I would think. So that's a period
I know where
of time
it comes
I bought.
from. Yeah, it comes from
it comes from the percentage
the rate
gains.
of return. It comes from the percentage gains.
And then people assume the 15,000 end of the range too. And so that's how they come up with these assumptions of like hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars made. Dude, I will tell you after we did our calculations, in my entire time in college, or Congress, my entire time in Congress, my actual realized gains since January 3rd, 2019, which is when I came into Congress, $18,900.
That's what you've made?
That's what I've realized. Unrealized gains, so stocks I just still own, if I sold them right now, less than that, $16,000. That's it.
Yeah.
But when you're like buying very little and it like triples, because you're smart and you buy during COVID. Yeah. People are like, 300% gain at $15,000 per, and so there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of false reporting and assumptions that are happening. Are you hearing those?
There's also there's a lot of distrust, man. It's
for sure. Because people see, there was a Senator Menendez was Googling how to sell gold bars that he got from the government of Egypt.
Very strong. Very strong. Let's just be on the nose with
terrible.
it, right?
That's terrible OPSEC, first of all. And like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I hate?
Right on the nose.
That? His son serves on the energy. He's a Democrat. They're all Democrats. He serves on energy and commerce. And every time he's a jerk. And every time he talks, I'm just like, how can you even be here? Like, your dad was like caught red-handed. There was another case recently. So yeah, there's cases of corruption, right? And that's why I signed on to that bill, because I'm like, why not? Let's just remove all doubt. All doubt. Why not? Who cares?
Which I think would help. And that's the issue. That key word there is doubt. And it's easy to come to that doubt when you see rates of return, when it's not explained that, and again, I'm not saying that this removes fault from people that may be trading on information not available to the public, but there is a difference between, the rate of return and the amount of money. For somebody to claim that you have made millions, where you have the statements to show that it's, 18,000 or 16,000. That's a tough bridge for somebody to jump across, but unfortunately, the government and those people that work for the government, and I say this as a citizen who consumes the same information everybody else does, it seems that as most people are in lockstep to reduce the amount of faith and trust in those people. I understand where it comes from. It seems to be rules for thee, but not for
it doesn't have to be logical, but if it's like we say in Buds, like perception is reality. That's kind of what this is.
And I think by removing that perception, removing that ability.
That's why I signed on to it. I'm like, I don't care. Just like it. And I went viral because I answered this question because it was, again, it actually does get to me personally because it's so untrue. And so I got caught off guard by a reporter asking it. And I was like, what am I, and my answer was like, look, I'm not allowed to invest. I'm not allowed to save my own money and invest it for my family's future. Like, that's what you're saying? And they're like, well, would you ban it? I was like, yeah, sure, ban it, because I don't even barely do it. I barely have any money in it. So I said yes back then too, even though everyone took it as me saying, like, defending it. Because both things can be true. Like, I can defend my integrity and say, look, I don't even have insider info, let alone do I trade on it. The last time I even bought a stock was March 2023. So, like, you have to be trading to be an inside trader. That's my general opinion on the logic of it. But it's just so untrue. And like, these numbers speak for themselves. And it's just like, I wish I was as rich as people think I am, but I'm not.
Yeah.
No, it's like the memes are not true.
Restricting, active political figures from trading doesn't solve issues. And I'll use Miss Pelosi as an example. Her husband is a prolific trader.
Yeah.
And
he
again,
does it for a living.
He does it for a living, but also he has direct access to somebody. And I was thinking about this one. I think what it comes down to is she has
some suspicious trades. Like, people, I can't remember what people point to, but there's some suspicious ones for sure. It's not like people are totally crazy when it comes to Pelosi.
And you can go into AI, and I did that. I looked up, I asked AI, because I know you used Grok one time, is there any evidence of Dan Crenshaw insider trading? And it spit out an answer, there's no direct evidence. I used the same thing for Nancy Pelosi. I said, is there any direct evidence of Nancy Pelosi insider trading? And it actually spit out the same answer. And that's the issue, right? Like, there's no way to really restrict this. And people's loss of faith comes from they want to believe that the world is fair and equality of opportunity exists. But the reality is, you guys, elected officials, have access to information that the rest of us don't.
We have a lot less than you think, but Perception's
but
reality.
you have more than the average person. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. And so,
They
yeah,
don't have nearly as much
you,
as Wall Street. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. It's and like I said, restricting your ability to trade doesn't restrict. It doesn't mean you don't have a cousin or what I mean. I'm not saying you. I'm just talking about in general. Yeah. There's no real way to cut all of this off, but I do think it would be a step at least to level what people consider the playing field to be, whether it's in reality or not.
I agree. Just because take it off the table so we can do our work. I mean, because it's just it's one of the most mistrusted institutions in America, Congress. I mean, people hate Congress. People tend to like their congressman. That's sort of a civics truth. But I mean,
why do you think it's the most mistrusted organizations on earth?
Well, there was a lot of corruption before a lot of these ethics rules came into play. I mean, it wasn't always the case that we had to report all of our finances and all this stuff. It wasn't always the case that we couldn't take gifts. Yeah. It wasn't always, none of this stuff was I mean, the old days, 80s and 90s, I think there was a lot more of these things happening. And obviously people still sleep. I just gave an example of a recent one, that senator taking literal gold. That's illegal, dude. It is.
It's frowned upon. Are we sure it's illegal? It's frowned upon.
1,000% illegal. We have to take. Remember how we had to do? Remember how we had to take? What do we call? How am I forgetting the term in the military when we take those stupid online courses every 5 minutes? Military, man, what are they called? How are we both?
If you had not just asked me that directly, I would have been able to answer that in a heart. I know what you're talking about. It's PowerPoints that people go like this, and then they're done.
General GMTs, maybe general military training. Anyway,
no, they're not GMTs.
Well, whatever. They're things that we have to do in the military.
It's like Navy Knowledge Online. NKO.
Yeah, it's a waste. Everybody hates them. They're a waste of our time. It's like teaching us things like you're not supposed to put the thumb drive in the computer, and it tells you that for an hour. We have to do the same kind of thing in Congress over.
Do you know a better way around that? Is to give people computers without thumb drive ports.
Totally. But let's move on from that.
I'm just providing real world solutions to everyday problems. All right.
So we have to do the same thing. So yes, it's illegal. What's illegal and what's not, or at least what's against our rules. But this was very clearly illegal. I mean, I'll also point out to people take the FBI corruption division. It's a career maker if you can get a politician on corruption. You think they're not looking at this? They're absolutely looking at it. It's why we're the vast majority of congressmen are actually scared to death of doing anything. The vast majority, not all of them, clearly.
I think a lot of people, unfortunately, would say that the reason the FBI is not doing anything is they're equally as corrupt.
Nah, I'm telling you, it's a career maker. I think we all know that. It's a career maker.
Yeah, but I think faith in government.
Take down a politician.
Maybe. Unless they're all in it together. I think faith in government and political figures is at an all-time low. And the
FBI is not the best example because there's less faith in the FBI than there used to be. I would hope that people have more faith in it with Kash Patel as the guy leading it. I like Kash. Actually we have a very close mutual friend from the teams. That's kind of how we know each other. He's eminently qualified for it, contrary to I think a lot what Democrats say. So, there were some really bad apples in the FBI that really screwed up the FBI's reputation, right? This whole Russiagate, the Crossfire Hurricane, all of that. So understandably, right? There's people would have that perception. The reality remains it's a career maker if you take down a politician for insider trading. There's no way around that. Of course it is.
Let's talk about the legal
power.
Well, let's talk about the legal influence. Lobbying, oftentimes described as legal bribery. What are your thoughts?
So you're represented by a lobbyist. Everyone is represented by a lobbyist. I don't care what industry you're in. Yep. Whatever, because you are in media, you're connected with.
I don't know this person.
Coffee, right?
Who is representing me?
You don't, but there's people who represent you, whether it's an association or something. First of all, let's talk about the financing that lobbyists can donate. So an organization, let's say that an oil company, has the right under their First Amendment rights to ask the people who work at the oil company and they usually ask their executives, the people who actually make some money, hey, contribute to our PAC, a political action committee, so that we can pay somebody to live in Washington and make sure that congressmen and senators know what our issues are. And we use that money to donate to them. Now, the max donation is $5,000. So there is no single PAC at all that can even come close to buying you off, because $5,000 is nothing when it comes to like your actual, what you need in a campaign. It's nothing. So, and the other thing I've found, and this is just my experience, is the ones who are donating to you because they already agree with you and you already agree with them. I don't get donations from pro-choice people trying to change my mind. You know, they don't even try because they know it's a waste of time. Because in the end, I need to get reelected. And the only way I get reelected is if I stick to the principles that I said I was running on. So when people are trying to kick me out of office, what are they doing back home? They're trying to tell people that I'm not voting a certain way. It's all a lie. I mean, the lies that are being said about me right now by my opponents are pretty extraordinary.
Can't they look up how you voted, though? I mean,
yes,
isn't that public record?
People could look it up, but they don't. And so that's why you need a lot of money in a campaign, because you got to send people mail and TV ads that actually show them like, hey, this is actually what the truth is. That's why campaigns are expensive. Because I always make this joke. It's not really a joke, but I'm like, campaigns could cost us nothing if everybody just went to my website and like just looked up, you know, what your question is. But people don't do that. And for, you know what, like a lot of people just have a lot of other things going on. So I get it. You know, your job is not to like know everything about politics, right? You know, and so I have to then, when I'm campaigning, I have to make sure I'm communicating with you a ton, which costs a lot of money. So anyway, but back to the lobbyists, what do they do? I mean, you know, when you're meeting with them, like they're really talking specifics. Right? Like this bill is good because it does this, or this bill is bad because it does this, and this is how it affects our industry. Okay, well, these are good things for us to know. I don't care what industry it is. It's good for us to know how the law like ends up actually manifesting in reality. And so it's just not as now in the past, this is what people think about. In the past, why are they called lobbyists? Because they would wait in the lobby and they did have too much power, and there weren't limits on that contribution. And they could give gifts, they could give all sorts of things, and it was all legal. They can't do that anymore. I would say the new form of lobbying that is truly corrupt is the online influencer lobbying. So let me tell you a story. From what I've heard, I don't want to get sued by the pharmacy benefit managers. Remember we talked about them?
Yep.
Okay. But what I heard from pretty good sources is this is how you protect yourself from legal liability. Okay. You don't state it as a fact. That's what the problem is.
Throw an allegedly at the end of your sentence.
Allegedly, I heard from pretty good sources that millions were spent by PBMs on a specific bill. This was last December. So about a year ago, and people might recall Trump's about to take office. And we need to keep the government open. We need to vote on a CR, another CR, a continuing resolution, because we can't seem to get it. We can never get budgets done in Congress. That's all. Federal budgeting, if you want to get into that, it's a whole other thing. But they're very hard to get done because we never have supermajorities. So you always have to make a deal, and nobody wants to make a deal, so we end up doing CRs. Now, attached to that CR was PBM price transparency reform. Bipartisan, passed out of my committee. It was good to go. It made that CR like 1,500 pages because that's complicated legislation. But it's legislation we should all want. Everybody wants that, except PBMs. But Elon Musk started bashing it for some reason. To this day, I don't know why. And then, again, this is the allegedly part. I heard from good sources that PBMs were paying a lot of money to these intermediaries, like these companies, like one is called like Influenceable, for instance, is the name of one company. I'm not saying they're the ones who did this. I don't actually know. But
talking about like ad brokers?
Kinda. They're like media companies. So they take money in, and then they text message all of these influencers, on this case on the right, like right-wing influencers, and say, hey, post this, like the CRs against Trump, post this stuff about how bad this thing is, and we'll pay you $800 per ad. And they don't have to and then no one has to disclose anything. No one has to disclose that they're being paid. This happens with super PACs, with candidates, all the time. And so every time I put an ad out, I have to disclose that this ad is paid for by Dan Crenshaw for Congress. Every single thing I put out has to say that, right?
I think on social media you are required to say it is an ad. I have never participated in this, but I'm pretty sure
you are not. I mean, you are not.
I am 100% open to being wrong. Yeah.
If one of these companies wants to pay you to like say bad things about me, you don't have to disclose that somebody paid you.
Well, I would do it for free.
I know that. but you know what I mean? Like, you are not legally obligated. If you were a PAC, you are legally obligated.
I thought you were required to on social media. And again, I could be wrong, and I don't participate in that.
You're not. You're just not. And lobbyists are, right? They everything has to be, because it's an actual legal entity. It's a PAC. So they actually do have to disclose if it's spent by this super PAC or that super PAC. And then you can look up who donated to that super PAC. I mean, there's super PACs and then there's PACs. Sorry, we're like using a lot of terms right now. A super PAC is a bunch of rich people who get together for a cause or a person. Happens all the time. But you can also, again, it has to be disclosed. It's paid for by this super PAC. And then you can look up who donates to that super PAC. So
why not make it easier and just put all re-elections on a same budget?
Well, that's what some countries do. The reason you can't is because of our First Amendment will never allow that. It'll die. The Supreme Court will shut that down unless we literally change the Constitution.
Is this because of the Citizens United ruling?
Yep.
Where money was essentially
that's the big landmark one. Yes. And so it was a lot more corrupt back in the day because there was no limits. And so Congress put limits on there. And so that's the kind of reality we live in now. It's just not exactly what people think. They just don't have the influence. That nobody can influence. There's no lobbyist that can influence me, except by logic, right? Like if they tell me like, dude, there's like 500 people in your district going to lose jobs for this. I'm listening now. I mean, that I'll listen to. And that's helpful knowledge. Like I wouldn't know that if they didn't have representation coming and talking to us. But as far as the money, like the money is it's really not, it's not even close enough to influence you. So let's go back to that example real quick. You don't have to disclose, if you're an influencer, just a guy who runs a social media page or a podcast, you don't have to disclose anything. And because you're being paid by this intermediary company. And that's how they took down the CR, because like there was conservative outrage over it. Nobody ever mentioned PBMs. They were just mad about the CR. Then you had Elon Musk going up and saying, oh, look, victory. It was a 1,500-page bill, and now it's a 100-page bill. Yeah, because you took out all the good stuff that we actually wanted and agreed upon. And you still, by the way, still have a CR.
A 1,500-page bill, by the way.
Well, okay, why are bills so long? That's a great question. Great civics question. Okay. If we started pulling up, then you can easily just look up whatever bill. Look up something complicated like PBM reform or immigration law. That language is written by lawyers, okay? So because you're changing U.S. code every time you write a new law. So it's long because one, the margins are like this thick. And there's just not a lot of words per page. So that's one reason. They're like triple spaced, any piece of legislation. And there's a lot of language in there that's like defining terms. There could be 30 pages of defining terms. And then there's another line that's like, well, we're replacing U.S. Code 12B with this under clause, and we're replacing the word a with the. It's literally, that's how it's written.
So now, then given that the language is like that and at the length that it is, what is the expectation of the people voting on it and their understanding exactly and precisely of what it is they're voting for?
We are supposed to know because, okay, so let's go back to like the Schoolhouse Rock video. Like how does a bill get made? Well, there's that video and that kind of goes through the mechanics of it, right? Like, but I'll tell you the like as a practitioner, this is how it works. I have a policy idea that I want to get done. All right. I talk to my staff. We start to craft that policy idea. I want the law to do these things. We craft it further. We work with experts all over the place to try and get it right where it needs to be. Make sure that we're not just like throwing some things out there. Because look, you can write a piece of legislation on the back of a napkin if you want. and throw it in the hopper. The hopper is it's a little box down at the House floor. That's how you introduce legislation. Still very old school. And so legislation can be simple. Don't get me wrong. Like the legislation I just got passed to ban federal funding for transgender, any transgender affirmation care on minors. No federal funding shall go to that. I passed that bill a couple weeks ago. I've been working on that for years. I finally got a House vote on it, even had some Democrats vote on it. There's a chance that we maybe could get it through the Senate and make history. Because minors should not be getting any transgender affirmation care. No way. No puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or surgical interventions. Anyway, to have that happen, well, that's a simple bill because you could read that one and it'd be pretty simple. But even that one, if you started reading it, well, it would start talking about amendment to the Social Security Act of 19 whatever. It would be automatically confusing. It's not like it's not like the law just says what I just said. What I just said is in layman's terms what it does. Yeah. And that's how we do this. And we get technical assistance from the agencies that have to then regulate the law. Because anytime you put a law into place, well, the agency, the executive branch, is the executor of laws. So then they write thousands of pages of regulations to get that just right. Like you asked, so we'll pass a law that says like we have to disclose our stocks. But we don't exactly say how to do it. We don't get into that level of detail. We could, but we usually don't. And so the regulatory agency then decides, like, this might not be a perfect example because I don't know exactly how we got to those weird ranges we were talking about. But in general, this is how it works. Like whether it's the EPA or HHS or whatever, they go into extreme detail on like, okay, how are we actually going to do this and execute this? Okay, because I might say, hey, everybody gets universal HSAs, like we talked about. Okay, the way that is written might be simple in law. Really not that simple because that would be pretty complicated language. But it's way more complicated when HHS actually tries to do it. And the Treasury also has a play in that because you're talking about bank accounts. So it gets complicated. And so we get to the level of detail, the greatest level of detail possible from a policy perspective. That's like basically in layman's terms. And then you send it to the lawyers who work in this building. They're called legislative counsel, and they're the ones who turn that into actual legal language. And that's why it sounds like that. That's why it's 1,500 pages, that particular bill. PBM reform wasn't the only thing in there. There was a couple other really good things that we all agreed on, and it was a real shame. And it was frustrating because Elon's cheering. He's like, wow, we went from 1,500 pages to 100 pages. I'm like, by the way, there's the same amount of money being spent, and we're not getting the reforms we need on healthcare. Like, the metric of a good bill should not be the number of pages it is. That's not the metric of a good bill. It's what's in the bill. And so, that was a very frustrating time. And that's an example of what I think is the new corrupt lobbying, because it scared a ton of members into voting, into basically trashing that version of the CR and making it less pages. It scared everybody.
Is there a possibility where you guys could go to single issue bills as opposed to omnibus bills?
Well, we do. I mean, like the bill I passed last week was a single issue bill. So sometimes we do it that way. I like doing it that way, of course. The reason an omnibus happens is because it has to be an agreement. And so there's this idea of 12 appropriations bills passed separately, right? But let's not forget where that came from. It didn't come from the Constitution. You know what it came from? It came from the Budget Act of 1972. So it was written by Democrats that we should have 12 appropriations bills, and this will be our new federal budgeting system. And it's been that way ever since, and it never works. Because in the end, even if we happen to pass all 12 appropriations bills, just Republicans in the House, which hasn't even happened because of the internal disagreements, even if you did that, you still wouldn't have 60 votes in the Senate to pass it. So you got to make a deal. And the deal involves all of it, right? You're like horse trading here and there. And that's why it ends up being omnibus every time. A CR is also technically an omnibus because it's just a continuing budget from the last budget. So that's why. It doesn't mean it get right. We're all open to ideas on how better to do a federal budget. There aren't easy answers to it, to be perfectly honest.
I don't see how there could be, given the size of not only the nation itself, but the bureaucracy behind it.
It's huge. I mean, it's a huge undertaking. you know, we could talk about a million different ideas, especially with the military, because that's like the one part of the budget that does get passed. Because
I have an idea. You ready for this one?
Yeah.
If you don't pass and balance the budget, every member of Congress and the Senate is no longer eligible for election.
You could do that. Then the next batch of senators and and congressmen would have the same problem because they would still disagree because their voters are still electing the same kind of people. It wouldn't. I'm just telling you the reality. It wouldn't work. Is
it working now?
Well, we're a divided country, which is actually how our founders intended it. So you could argue it is working because our founders. Not
when it comes to balancing a budget.
No, our founders did not intend for us to make it easy to pass national law. They didn't want it to be easy.
There's a difference between being easy and it being.
Okay, well, you're talking about balancing the budget. Let's talk about that's a different issue. Okay, there's the difficulty of passing legislation, which again, like that you could fire everybody all you want. It doesn't matter because their voters are still going to put in the same people.
No, I'm talking about balancing the budget.
Okay, so balancing the budget. Why doesn't that happen?
All of you should be fired.
Well, we should talk about that. You can tell us all we should be fired, but like some of us are actually trying to fix it. So don't fire all of us.
Nope. That is not how Andy Stumpf's Bill 001 works. It's more of a black or white thing.
Okay, but first let's talk about the problem. You got to understand the problem before you know the solutions, right? So the problem is that why is our debt climbing? It's climbing because of an aging population. Because back in the FDR days and the Great Society, they put in Medicare and Social Security because we didn't want our old people to retire and then just be living on the streets, and we wanted them to have health care. So you have something called mandatory spending. Mandatory spending is not in that CR. It's not in our appropriations because it's mandatory. So VA benefits, for instance, your retirement is mandatory. It gets paid. We don't appropriate that. We don't debate that every year. It just happens. Medicare just happens. Social Security checks go out to old people. They just happen. It's mandatory spending. What percentage of the budget do you think accounts for mandatory spending? And interest on the debt is also mandatory. We have to pay the interest.
62%.
It's higher. It's getting closer to like 75%. So
okay, I'm actually closer than I thought I was going to be because that was a wild ass guess.
It is a huge amount of the budget. And so for that to change, so we can argue about, and then what's the rest of the 25%? About half of it's the military. We're going to spend the money on that. And a lot of it's VA stuff too. We're going to spend the money on that. Yeah. And like when we did the math on this, when we were like, we actually did a really good job when we were in the minority under McCarthy's leadership. We were playing chicken with the debt ceiling, if you recall. The debt ceiling is a lot more dangerous to play chicken with than just shutting down the government. You shut down the government, people are like, okay, well, the government shut down. It happens a lot. It's not a big deal. We've never defaulted on our debt. And so you have to raise the debt ceiling. So as Republicans, we're always like, look, if we're going to raise the debt ceiling, we want something for it. And we did get something for it. We got $1 trillion less in spending, some deregulatory things, some permitting issues that make it easier on our energy sector to build what they need to build. We cut that deal.
Is it even possible to pay off our debt at this point?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to have a responsible debt trajectory, your GDP just needs to be higher than your annual deficits. And then it's a totally sustainable problem. You don't have to go to zero deficits. You just have to, your growth just has to outpace your deficits. That's the math.
Yeah.
Because the math everybody, do you have debt? I have debt. Everybody has. Yeah. I mean, the wealthiest people in the world have tons of debt. In fact, that's how they live. I mean, it's the games they play. But and so the U.S. government's no different. We're allowed, issuing debt isn't the problem. The problem and the problem is the politics of that 75% of spending. Because what did I say it is? It's the stuff people want, especially older voters. So that's why we call it the third rail of politics. So I can say all day long, and I do, that we have to tackle that, and we have to tell people the truth about why it's the way it is and what we need to do to fix it. And we shouldn't look at it as a left versus right problem. It should be the ultimate solution is eventually a deal between younger generations and older generations. You both have to give something, because what's changed? Well, people are living a lot longer, and they didn't have enough babies. So when Social Security first began, I'm going to get these numbers kind of wrong because I don't have them off the top of my head, but you were looking at like, I don't know, I think a 1-to-6 ratio for like seniors and workers. Now it's like 1-to-3. Okay, so and seniors are living longer. Your average life expectancy is like 78. Back then it was like 62. Okay, so that's why Ronald Reagan, again, good conservative, made the deal with Democrats to start raising the retirement age slowly. So, I mean, that's what my generation and your generation should have to give. Well, you're really old. I don't, so maybe not. But like me, as a 41-year-old, I shouldn't be retiring at 67. Like, have me retire at 75. I don't care. That's what I'll give. And
I don't think I ever will retire. So I'm not a good data point on this because I don't like idle time. I actually like figuring stuff out, right? I am a reverse millionaire.
It's not about you necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But it's about like, that's the general concept though.
But
and so people have to be told the truth about the fact that this is a demographics problem and the voters won't let us. Like we could, if Republicans had 60 votes in the Senate, I do think that we would actually try and change this. And the second we did, we'd be voted out of office and the Democrats would put it right back the way it was. That's a really hard problem to solve. So the American people have to be told.
So where's that leave us? Yeah, I mean, where's that leave us?
We still just got to keep fighting for the truth. I mean, George Bush had a really good plan to actually solve this, but it was, remember, it was right after the Iraq War, so we lose a lot of political capital on that already. 2004, they had the Social Security reform plan that would have worked wonderfully. It was designed by a former Reagan economics chief. He actually taught at Harvard. I actually took his class at Harvard in 2017. Harvard does have Republicans teaching, as it turns out. And Marty Feldstein, fantastic mind. He had that's why I can speak Social Security pretty well because I took his class. I've written essays about it. There was a plan that would have worked, and it involved privatizing our benefits to a degree, which would be a good idea. Let the market help us. We should have the retirement plan should mirror your 401ks in some ways. That's kind of what the plan was. It wouldn't work. The math wouldn't work anymore, because it's too far gone. So you'd have to have an even more severe plan at this point. And if Republicans wanted to take the reins and do it, well, a lot of our voters would turn on us because a lot of our voters are older voters. And I've had this conversation in so many town halls. It was wild. And recently too, what
it sounds like you're describing, though, is that all we're really doing is pushing out the timeline. It seems like the tracks for the train are coming to an end. We can push it out beyond the horizon that your generation and my generation can see, but it doesn't seem like there's
it's not
an actual
it's actually,
solution.
No, it's way sooner than that. I mean, these things are going bankrupt in 2030s. So we're gonna have to confront this problem. Thank God we have to confront the problem, because that's the only thing that's going to make us confront the problem is when the trust funds actually go broke. So Social Security and Medicare operate off of a trust fund. And when you pay your taxes, you see that it's FICA. You see that part of your taxes. That's money that goes directly from you straight to your grandparents' bank accounts. That's what happens. And so, there's a trust fund that it goes into, and that trust fund is being depleted at a rate that's unsustainable. People say, well, the government raided the trust fund. That's why it's being depleted. That's often used. It's often said. It's not true. The trust fund buys government bonds. So it is we're kind of using our own money in a way. So there is something weird about that on the surface. But in the reality is it actually makes the trust fund stronger, because when you buy bonds with it, you're getting an interest rate. So that's actually making the trust fund money. So that part is not why these trust funds are going bankrupt. They're going bankrupt because of demographics. We're an aging population, didn't have enough kids. It truly is as simple as that. You need more workers paying into the system. And you also have to change the system. I mean, again, we're living longer. There's a stat out there, 80% of Medicare costs are in the last few weeks of life. This is where the money's going. And it's what are you going to do? Well, we have a moral obligation not to let them, these are tough issues. So you can't make them that simple. And so, the reason I forgot why I was bringing up that debt ceiling thing, because when we were doing the calculations, we realized what we were arguing about was 11% of the budget. And 11% of the budget, more or less, is literally every agency you can think of. except for the DOD and VA. Every other agency government-wise you can think of, from EPA to HHS to the FBI, like all of it is about 11%. So that should tell you something. You can only cut so much in appropriations, right? You can nibble around the edges. We can cut billions here and there, and we have, right? One of the big accomplishments we did when we did this last reconciliation bill, the Working Families Tax Cut Act, was the fact that we didn't raise your tax. We made sure your taxes didn't increase surprisingly in December, which is what would have happened. Everybody's taxes would have gone up because the tax cuts expired from 2017. So we prevented that from happening, but we also wanted to find savings, and so that's why we made all these changes to Medicaid. And they were good changes. I worked a lot on those changes. And we could talk about them in detail if we want, but we're going on quite a bit of time here, and it's honestly just too nerdy for people. But just know that the Democrats claiming that we're kicking 12 million people off Medicaid, just not true. We're kicking illegals off Medicaid, people who are falsely enrolled, people who didn't even know they were enrolled, because unfortunately there's incentive structures in place for states to enroll people even without their knowledge, even though they might have a job and have health coverage that way, because HMOs, the health management organizations, and you might think, well, they're not using the Medicaid, so why does it matter? It matters because HMOs do get a fee for organizing that state's Medicaid plan, and they get a fee per enrollee. Some people are double enrolled in different states. We made it illegal, so illegals can't enroll. And then the biggest thing was work requirements, which was actually my bill from January. So we got that into there, where if you're an adult, an able-bodied adult with no dependents, you should have to work if you're getting Medicaid. 80% of Americans agree on that. So we have done things to try and roll it back. That bill saved well over $1 trillion over 10 years. That we work within 10-year budget windows. That's just because of that 1972 law. And so a lot of gimmicks happened with that, but this really did save that money. Now, Democrats will say we actually spent a lot of money because we didn't let the taxes increase. I would argue that letting you keep more of your money is a good thing. It doesn't cost. It should not be, philosophically, I don't think that it costs the taxpayer money when we let the taxpayers keep their money. You know what I mean? So that's a philosophical disagreement between us and Democrats.
Yeah, I think one of the talking points you'd get to is that the deficit increased, whereas the current administration ran on decreasing the deficit.
Yeah, but again, on the programs that matter, like Medicaid, that's what we've done. Trump didn't run on that. Also, to be fair, he's never been a debt guy. I am. I talk about it very plainly to you, what I would do if I had the magic wands. I don't care what kind of grief I get for it. It needs to be done. I'm fighting for my generation because my generation will not have these programs. Your generation will not have these programs. Yeah. And it's not fair to us. And like I was mentioning the town halls I've done, I was so surprised because these town halls are coming off after, right after we passed this bill, which actually removed taxation for Social Security checks. And you'd be surprised how many people are still complaining about the fact that they have to pay, that their Social Security isn't high enough. And by the way, we didn't do it for rich people. It only applies if you make $150,000 a year. So it really truly was like a middle class tax cut. And I'd ask voters sometimes, well, have you run this idea by your grandkids that they should be taxed more so that your Social Security check should be bigger? Because your kids are starting their families, they're starting their businesses, they're just starting life, and they're starting a life in an era where at least three things are objectively more expensive, and those things are housing, healthcare, and education. So why are we going to tax those people more, those people being young people, just to deliver it to people who've had their whole lives to save and thrive? It's not fair. And so you want to know why the debt is because that conversation is really hard to have politically. There's not that many people willing to say what I just said.
That is a difficult, nuanced conversation. And like you said earlier, both sides are going to have to give something. It's not going to be one where it's going to be all just one side.
It has to be a compromise because, again, why did George Bush's fail? Because famously, remember, everybody said, he's throwing Granny off a cliff. And there's all these commercials of Granny going off a cliff. But what that plan was going to do was save it. It's so frustrating how the politics of this work because it was just all politics back then. Yeah. And it still is.
All right. Three more questions for you because we are going on 3 hours. You mentioned town halls. explain to me what happened with the 10-year-old that you bumped
the 10-year-old. The 10-year-old that was never. Sometimes she's a 12-year-old. Sometimes she's 10. The reality is she was an adult, well over 18, and she was either dating or worked for my opponent at the time. That's pretty much the end of that story. So like that was I wouldn't even call that a town hall. That was like a meeting with the Montgomery County Tea Party. So everybody was just kind of laying into me with a bunch of questions, and I'm there to take it. It's my job, right? I'll take the questions. Yeah. But she was a campaign operative, and she was not a child. She just looked like the internet just said she was. There was a whole story written about, like, it's been debunked. I mean, we can look it up. Like, there's the whole story written about it debunking this. It's like, no, this was this person, worked for the campaign.
That doesn't trend as well as the video.
No,
unfortunately.
Well, the video, I'm not even sure what's. I mean,
the video is
you're saying I don't believe in Jesus, and you're using this, like, you're taking out of context an interview I did with Jocko like years ago, where I was making a point about archetypes, and I'm like, I was like, don't question my faith, like that's out of line, like, of course I believe Jesus was real, and yeah, I mean, sometimes I come off strong. What can I say? But it makes the story wouldn't land if it was an actual campaign operative asking it, right? But it lands if you make it a 12-year-old girl, because it's just this poor little girl asking the question, but that's not what happened. It
was a 10-year-old, Dan.
According to your sources.
Term limits.
Oh, you said these aren't easy questions. So I'll say I'm in favor of term limits because the people are in favor of term limits. We'd have to figure out like what the right number is, But I also tell people the truth about term limits and what the actual outcomes will be. I would note that for all my listeners in Texas, you have no term limits on any of your politicians, and you seem to like the way your government works. Governor Abbott is running on a 4th term, and he can keep going if he wants, because people like him. So we don't have term limits in Congress. Here's what would happen. So here's the problems with it, right? Like the pros are simply that majority of Americans want it, so we're in favor of it. You would need a constitutional amendment to get it done, so it's a pretty dang high bar, which is why it doesn't just get done. And then there'd be a huge argument over what's the right amount of years? Well, what's the right amount of years in the SEAL teams? I mean, do you want a platoon full of new guys? No, I mean, so it's not that dissimilar of an analogy. So here's the cons to it. You're institutionalizing inexperience. And there's this idea that like there's a citizen legislator and, we just come here and it should be a temporary job. And that was fine when we were in an agrarian society and we just didn't have very complicated issues to deal with. I would say we have extremely complicated issues to deal with now. My psychedelics bill took me years to kind of figure out how to actually work that system and get the bill in there into the military spending bill, the NDAA, so that it would actually become law. I got bulldozed like multiple times, being like, what the heck? I got it passed out of the House. It takes you some time to realize, like, wait a second, the Senate doesn't even vote on our amendments that we pass out of the House. It has to be in the base text. And to get it in the base text, you have to start the process earlier. So there's a whole lot of things you learn as you pick up. We specialize, like I said before. My majors are in environment and energy and, the cartels and national security intelligence, kind of a lot of majors. There's others who are very focused on ag, right? The Agricultural Committee. I don't know much. I don't know much about that. So you got to trust your fellow members sometimes to be like, this is what's good policy and this is what's not. You still got to look into it yourself. You asked how we even like read those big bills that make no sense. I mean, it's our job to figure it out, and we figure it out because it is a team effort. And there's basically policy explanations behind every single bill that sounds like legal jargon, right? So, and then it's kind of translated back into normal policy. Okay, this is what it does. We need to know that. But term limits would empower who? They empower the bureaucracy, the administrative state, so the executive branch, because they can just wait you out. And they empower Capitol Hill staff, especially on the committees. If you're not a seasoned member who's like been like, you know what, I saw this trick 10 years ago, I know what they're doing, like you're not very useful to the people anymore. So it really does not empower the people the way I think is largely thought. It empowers staff. And you could say, well, term limit the staff too. Well, now you've just got like a very inexperienced group of people running the show. And that's not good either. You need members who know how to stand up to staff and know when staff is full of crap. And you only know that after actually having some experiences yourself and getting to know the policies. It doesn't mean I don't want citizens. I want people to have a background in something when they run for Congress, whether it's the military or business or something. There's like these kind of lifelong politicians that were in politics before. They were chief of staff, and then they ran for Congress, became a congressman. Then again, I look at those, and they're actually some of our better members. So it's hard to say that that's a really bad route either, because at least they understand the place. And it's up to their voters. It's up to their voters in their district whether they're still trusted or not.
And that's the thing. I think a lot of the conversation around this comes either through trust or faith. And I think we're at a place right now where faith and trust is at an all-time low. So an easy thing to say is if they are corrupt beforehand or they are corrupted by the ecosystem, let's limit exposure. I've even said this myself, right? Like most medications, ibuprofen, even water has a maximum lethal dosage. Even though we never found it as a BUDS instructor, I did try with your class, got yelled at, not a big deal. But, so what can you do? Don't take more than 8 aspirin a day. Like I get it. And perhaps it's overly simplifying something, but I can also understand where people are coming from that perspective.
Yeah, but when I explain this in town halls all the time, and minds get changed because I'm just pointing out the reality, and I don't think everyone has thought about it that way. And so being honest gets you in a lot of trouble. I've noticed. Like that's why I was hated congressman, because I just tell you, I'm going to tell you how it is. I haven't changed. The biggest compliment I get from my team guy friends is like, "Wow, you haven't changed. You're still a jerk." Yeah, I haven't.
Like
changed.
your boys at 6.
My boys at 6. And,
never write that down again. Think that. Don't even think it. With me not even knowing about it.
My friends? Would I say my friends? What do you want me to say? In any case,
just like, hey, I heard from some team guys.
Okay, next time I will.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, that's
also next time get his phone number. Not Instagram. We're not children.
I don't know what the difference. You see a big difference between Instagram and phone numbers, but I don't. And the reality is like I would have liked to had him just call me and reach out to me, but he never did. So it goes to my final question for you, because again, when this episode comes out, hopefully you guys are sitting down talking. What's your hopeful end state at the end of that conversation? Like if you could wave a magic wand and have the end state that you were looking for, what would it be? Just buddies, just water under the bridge and move on. I don't need it. I got work to do. Like that's not my work, So I'm going in there with just like I'm not going in there to fight him. This is not the goal. I'm going in there for truth. Like we've discussed a lot of things that have been said, and I've kind of and I've had the chance to debunk a lot of them. We didn't even get to like some of the big ones, like like Eddie Gallagher, geez. But like I know he'll ask about a lot of that stuff, and I wanted the chance to debunk a lot of it on his platform. So I just hope we just have a truthful conversation, and I'm going to bring everything he needs to see it, so that he knows, like, okay, like this stuff just isn't true, whether it's insider trading or this or that, whatever the accusation, the 12-year-old girl, 10-year-old girl, whatever. Like none of it's just not true. And so I just hope for a civil conversation where we end up being like, all right, you know what? I think we understand each other a little bit better. That would be nice. I'm not, it's unclear to me how they're thinking about it.
Well, you can only control your aspect of the conversation. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, we will shortly.
Yeah. What do you want to close out with? It's a 3-hour remote episode.
I want to close out with what my real job is, right? Is we've talked about a lot of the policy issues. Like, and again, I got a meeting tomorrow morning with the Senator about healthcare issues. It's going after the cartels. And like these slanderous lies about me in Mexico City, that really hurts my ability to do my actual job. My actual job is doing things for my district. I've been, what did I run on? I ran on two major things. One, flood mitigation, because my district flooded like crazy after Hurricane Harvey, and that's right after Hurricane Harvey is when I ran. Yeah. And I've been very successful in that. bringing back like about $200 million worth of federal funding for flood mitigation, not for crap projects. Like that's another thing. Earmarks is another question people have a lot. Earmarks are bad, right? It's like, yeah, they're bad if there's no guardrails and if you're using for just dumb crap, totally bad. But also they're the one way that we can help our district because that money's getting spent no matter what. So it's either spent by a bureaucrat in Washington or it's spent by your congressman who actually knows what needs to be done. And I only spend that on infrastructure. Like if, I only there's a process to it. Like you apply for certain projects, you work with local government. I'm like, hey, this is the project we want to do. In our case, flood mitigation, it's things like, honestly, just like clearing out a ditch a lot of times, which actually costs a lot of money. It's improving a road because that's like the Ford Road project in my district. It's like it's one of 3 ways out of a flood prone area. So it needs to be better. That road needs to be widened and done better. It's big stuff like dredging Lake Houston. That costs a lot of money. We got that done. It's reinforcing the spillway of Lake Houston Dam. And then eventually getting gates put in it so you can let the water be released. I mean, we can get into details. Like that's my job. That's what I signed up for. Constituent services, God, we have an amazing constituent services office back in the district that does we're basically your customer service representative for the federal government. So your VA claims, if you have FEMA claims, like whatever, like we're there to help you with that. And we do that's like a huge part of what we actually do. Passports. A lot of people forget that their passport needs to be renewed before they go on a trip, and we've become really good at getting to emergency meetings and passport appointments downtown Houston. So, I mean, destroying the cartels, stopping flooding, fixing healthcare, making sure that we're energy dominant. I mean, that's my real job. That's my real job, and I've been doing my real job, and I have a lot more to do. And so, that's why I even keep running, because there's a lot of cons to doing this job, right? I tell people, like, some quick civics lesson, like tell high schoolers, I'm like, you can get into, if you want to be involved, because I always get that question, how do I get more involved? And I say, well, it depends on what you want to do and what kind of cost you're willing to bear, because you get into policy, maybe work in a think tank, maybe you work for a congressman, maybe you stick to you stay out of the public eye. You're not going to be as influential. Maybe it could be at some point, but you're avoiding the public eye. Or you can run for political office, and of course these two things are intertwined. But if you're in politics, well, now you're in the public eye, and you're dealing with all the crap that I deal with while you're also trying to do your job. And there's a cost to that, but the benefit is you actually get a vote, and you can actually do more of the job. I can affect. I've listed a ton of different policy issues that really have nothing to do with each other. I couldn't do all that if I just went the policy route, right? I'd be doing something very specific. As an elected member or elected official of anything, that's the benefit, is you can actually affect more for the good of your constituents. And if your constituents feel like you haven't done that, then they can throw you right out every 2 years. Like, we just got done with an election, but yet my next election is in 2 months. Just barely over 2 months. I mean, it's always right around the corner. So the opportunity to throw your member out is always there for you.
Is it true congressmen and senators spend about 60% of their time getting reelected?
It's hard to put a number on that. That seems, I don't. That's way too much. But over the next couple of months, I'm going to be forced to do a lot of just reelection stuff. So we're up in D.C. We're doing work. It's kind of coming up to DC is it feels like you're going on deployment. Like our schedule is all day long,
that makes sense.
All night.
Yeah.
It's intense.
Is it worth it to you still with the additional scrutiny?
Well, for now, because I'm able to do things I'm chairman of the subcommittee on Intelligence Committee. I'm chairman of the subcommittee for Defense Intelligence. That's a huge part of our entire national security apparatus that I get to have a huge effect on. And use my background to do it. So yeah, that's worth it, even though I take all this crap. I just passed a bill to stop federal funding for transgender affirmation care. Yeah, that's worth it. All the stuff I've done for flooding, yeah, that's worth it. Because it saved people's lives and property. I can point to things that have saved people's lives and property. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Psychedelics legislation, that will save lives. I mean, well, what's interesting about the Sean Ryan thing is like he credits that with saving his life, the whole Ibogaine thing. I'm like, I wonder if he even knows that I'm the guy who pioneered it legally. Like, I don't even know he knows that. We'll find out, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it's worth it. And the family issues is important to talk about. Morgan Luttrell, for instance, Margaret Stoll's twin brother. I was a big supporter of his and helped get him. But he has 3 kids in school. He never gets to see them. So the reality is, you're really definitely not back home campaigning 60% of the time, because we're here. Like, I wish I had a percentage for you, because I mean, I could show you my calendar, but maybe it's like 40% of the time.
It's a common figure.
But it's really, this job is not possible with young kids, because you have to move them to DC if you're going to ever see them. And that's why Morgan's retired. I bring up Morgan because I never even had to ask him why he's like decided not to run again. I know why. It's because he's got 3 young kids. I have one daughter who's not in school yet, and I can travel with her. I just take her with me, so I get to see my family. When that's not the case anymore, the calculation will change. That's why you don't see a lot of members who are young with kids. Like, you're not seeing a lot of that, and there's a good reason for it. In the past, everybody did move to DC. Like, in the past, meaning like up until like the mid '90s. And for whatever reason, like, it just became this political liability. Even though the voters voted for you to work for them in D.C., the idea of you living in D.C. became just wrong. So you definitely need to live in the district. Otherwise, voters hate you. But still, some members still move to D.C., very few. Again, and it's 100% because of their kids. You just won't see them. You just won't, because even when you're not in DC, well, you've got other things too. There's events, there's congressional delegations, especially on the Intelligence Committee. Like, we're supposed to be traveling a lot. I won't be traveling at all because my election's right around the corner. But then after that, I'll be traveling a ton. There's a lot of places I have to go for my job. You learn a lot about, especially when it comes to intelligence, when you're actually on the ground talking to station, talking to whatever DOW entity is there. Actually, I'll be taking a trip very shortly to Southcom for that reason. So I am doing one more trip. My point being is, if you look at my calendar, it might be 40% of the time in DC, maybe, but in reality, it's not that at all. You're still at your home is like barely a percentage, it seems like. And man, I'm one of the lucky ones. Like, I have 4 flights a day from DC to Houston. And I live 15 minutes from the airport, from both airports. Like, your Montana folks, like, they're always on a lay. Who's your rep?
Sheehy.
Well, that's your senator. But who's you only have 2 reps in Montana. So either Ryan Zinke, yeah. So you just love SEALs. Like, that's why you wanted to be in Montana, because you wanted SEAL representation.
I was here before them.
They came for you.
I don't think what I just said is true. I'm just saying it.
Yeah, well, it's either there's only 2 congressmen in Montana.
It's Zinke.
Anyway, so I don't even know where you live. What's your address? Can you say it on your podcast?
Sure. It's P.O. Box.
Yeah. So they're definitely taking, like, I don't even know what Zinke's like.
I know what it is, because I fly out of here all the time. You go to Salt Lake. Delta's the best choices. You're going Salt Lake or Minneapolis first, and then you're connecting through the hellhole.
It's a connection. I mean, it's a lot. Yeah. Like, but his kids are grown. Like, I see his wife here a lot, so it's sustainable for definitely your older members for sure.
Yeah.
It's very different. It's a very different life for your younger members, and a lot. There's more and more young members. The other thing I'll say about term, just so everyone knows, like the average term is actually 7 years in the House. It's a little higher in the Senate, but not by much. 7 years, and that's an old statistic. I'm willing to bet that if we did that new statistic now, it would be less, just because we've seen mass retirements over the last couple of years. New faces everywhere. So I would argue it's probably closer to 5 or 6 years. So, like, just going back to the term limit conversation, like, don't worry, guys, the job kills you. Like, it just, there's very few that stay. And here's the other thing about it. What we notice when we talk to voters is they like their congressman because they voted for them and they continue to vote for them. They just want everybody else's congressman to be thrown out. Well, what you're really saying is you want to disempower other people's ability to pick their member. You got to think about it that way because it's true. And I'll also point out, well, Nancy Pelosi's been there forever. Yeah, but who's going to replace her, by the way? It's San Francisco. You're going to get replaced. You're going to replace Nancy Pelosi with a younger, crazier, like purple-haired person who identifies as a dolphin on Thursdays. Like, that's who's going to replace Nancy for sure, right? She is retiring,
maybe,
I think, actually. So it'll be
that's
interesting
her choice,
to see.
though.
Yeah, it could be an interesting choice.
The stock tracking world is up in arms. They don't know what to do with themselves because her stock tracker does well. And obviously at the end of 2026, that's the end of that.
Yeah. I only had one time when it really did well, and I would still get slandered with this. I'd be like way down the list, and people are like, see, Dan Crenshaw. I was like, I'm not even at the, like, what the hell?
I think you hit number 5 once.
Yeah. No, once it was like, there was one time where I was way up there, again, percentage wise, because I was like, oh, okay, it's the market crash. I'll just buy at the dip. In my mind, I'm like, one, it's legal. I have to report it. I'm saving for, like, this is for my family. And in the end, I only put like $20,000 in. Like, that's literally what I invested. Maybe less. I have the numbers here somewhere. Anyway, we're going to go over that in more detail with Sean because that's what he's very interested in. But like, I literally had my bank account statements pulled, and I'm like, I even had I just had it pulled because I got it in the mail, and I was like, it was my appraisal value for my home in Houston. Well, it's not Houston. Technically, I live in Humble, but the greater Houston area. It's $407,000. Just so everyone knows, that is what my house appraises for. It's $407,000. Okay, if I'm hiding a bunch of money, I don't know where it is. I just don't know where it is.
Extended family, clearly, that's the move.
Clearly, yeah. Well, you could easily look at them. I don't have a rich extended family either. I don't even have that. It would make running for Congress a lot easier if I did. I didn't raise hardly any money. The fact that I'm even a congressman is a miracle. That's a whole other story.
Well, it'll have to be a story for another time because I assume you probably have something to do
I need to go
today
pick up my daughter.
Office.
But yeah. But this was important to me because it's you and you're my friend, and I think we had a good conversation. And 3 hours goes by quick.
It does. I am curious to see how it goes on Friday. I'll be watching the episode for sure, and I hope. Well, I think that I would like to believe that there's a better than not opportunity that you guys will find common ground. I mean, I have made the mistake so many times in my life of saying something or doing something based off of an assumption. And when I was confronted with that, it sucks. It sucks for everybody, right? Regardless of who you are. But if you know better, you can do better. That's what it comes down to.
It's not a big deal to be like, okay, I got that one wrong. I've had to do that with I got into fights with members or something, or
yelling at 10-year-olds.
I don't, anyway.
Threatening to kill Tucker Carlson.
One thing you'll get me to say I regret is definitely the Tucker Carlson thing. I do, as much as I hate that guy. You shouldn't threaten people's lives, Dan. You shouldn't threaten people's lives. That's not really a threat. It was more of a dumbass. It was just dumb. That he might have taken it as a legitimate threat. You are an ex-Navy SEAL. Granted, you can't see for shit, but you're still dangerous, perhaps. I would still challenge you in shooting.
To what?
Well, because you can't beat me at it. Like if we do like 6 steel plates, you can't beat me.
Where are you getting that from?
Well, because if you did beat me, I'd be like, wow, you beat a blind guy who shoots with his, I have to shoot with my left eye. I'm right eye dominant. So good job. And if I beat you, which is possible, it's not like I'm not bad of a shot, then I get to talk about your shot. So it's really the winning. As you know, Andy, the winning is about the shit talking. And that's where because you can't, it's a win-win for me.
I would use the term right eye dominant in the past tense. I don't know what that looks like, but you need to start doing that. Your left eye dominant. It's
clearly not my dominant eye. But I shoot rifle left-handed. And I still shoot my pistol right-handed.
Yeah, because you can just drive it over to your partially functioning eye.
So, but my big disadvantage on any pistol shooting is really just I can't front sight focus. Because this eye is super messed up. I mean, it's not really an eye. It's not like I lost an eye. I lost my vision, and then we barely saved my good eye. And so to see you, you're blurry as hell right now because I can't see up close, and I can't focus because I don't have a lens. So it's called aphakia. It's like when you get a cataract. except you can't really replace my cataract because it's trauma induced and it just screwed up all the tissue. So that's my one thing. I can't front side focus.
Yeah, makes it tough.
It's a little harder, but I don't know. You're probably really old too, so you probably can't front sight see anything either. So I don't know.
I have surgically corrected vision. I had.
You don't need like reading glasses or anything.
No. Due to my ability and superior,
Genetics,
technique and form as a SEAL, I didn't lose my vision.
Well, then see, you'll be in an advantage. So when I beat you, it'll be even more embarrassing for you. But if you beat me,
I have to let you win. If you beat
obviously, but if you beat me, it's just like, oh, good job. You beat the guy who can't even front side focus. Wow.
I'll let you win so you feel good about yourself.
That would be
I don't want to make another trending video.
I will come to Montana just to do that. All right. That would be fantastic. It would be good to, honestly, Montana.
We'll do 6 plates at 50 yards, and you can just blast a mountainside because you can't see.
50 yards? What are we shooting with?
6-shooter.
Okay. Actually, I have one of those. It's fascinating how accurate they are. There's like the ergonomics of the cowboy gun basically are fantastic.
Guns,
I'm like amazed by how accurate I can be with one of those. I have a 38 special. It takes 38 special rounds. It's just like a cowboy gun I just randomly got, and it's just like fun to shoot. And there's a reason that in the movies I think they were so good, because those things are actually ridiculously accurate and easier to shoot than our modern semi-automatic pistol. Would you agree?
I would agree, and I stopped carrying a pistol anyway because it just,
You don't
the odds of using
carry?
that thing. I do here, yeah.
Okay.
You get a ticket in Montana if you don't.
I like that. I just turned in all my paperwork to finally have my carry license in DC. It was a lot. In Texas, you can do whatever, it's constitutional carry. But things are getting a little hairy here, so it was definitely time to actually put in the work and get the license.
Yeah, fair enough.
My everyday would be a SIG 365, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, you have slightly smaller hands. That makes sense.
All right. Well, that's a great place to end.
Yeah, go pick up your daughter, man.
All right.